The Apache blade pressed against Ethan Cole's throat, its cold edge drawing a thin line of blood while lightning illuminated the face of the woman holding it, beautiful, fierce, and broken. In that storm-battered cave on the edge of Apache territory, a young cowboy who'd lost his way would discover something far more dangerous than death, a love that would force him to choose between his people and the woman who'd change everything he thought he knew about being a man. Stay with me, friends, as I tell you a story of courage, born from fear of love found in hatred's shadow. Comment below where you're watching from. Let's see how far this tale of the American frontier travels tonight. The storm came without warning, the way death often does in the desert, sudden, violent, and absolute. Ethan Cole had been riding drag on the Carter Company's cattle drive for 3 weeks, eating dust and dreaming of the bonus money waiting at the trail's end in Abilene. At 22, he was the youngest hand on the crew, still green enough that the older cowboys called him Tenderhoof, and made him do the worst jobs night watch in the rain, digging out stuck wagons, cleaning the chuck wagon's grease traps. But Ethan didn't mind. Every blister, every aching muscle, every sleepless night was proof he was becoming the man his dead father never got to see. The afternoon had started clear enough, the kind of crystalline blue sky that made the desert seem almost friendly. The herd moved steady through the valley between two mesa formations, their hooves raising a dust cloud that hung in the still air like smoke from a distant fire. Ethan rode his paint mare Buttermilk, keeping the stragglers moving occasionally, whooping at a stubborn longhorn that wanted to graze instead of walk. "Keep 'em tight, Tenderhoof," Jake Morrison, the trail boss, had shouted from up ahead. "Weather's building to the west." Ethan had looked where Jake pointed and seen the dark wall of clouds massing on the horizon, still miles away, but moving fast. In the desert, storms could cross 20 miles in the time it took to saddle a horse. But they had maybe an hour, Ethan figured, plenty of time to get the herd to the sheltered canyon Jake had scouted earlier. He was wrong. The wind hit first a screaming wall of sand and grit that turned day into twilight. The cattle, already nervous from the pressure drop, began to mill and bawl. Lightning cracked across the sky, not the distant, harmless kind, but close enough that the thunder came instantly shaking the ground beneath Buttermilk's hooves. "Storm's on us," someone shouted, but the words were torn away by the wind. The herd broke. 2,000 head of Texas longhorns scattered like pool balls after a break running blind into the storm. Ethan spurred Buttermilk after a group heading south trying to turn them back, but the rain hit, then not drops, but sheets of water so thick he couldn't see his horse's ears. Lightning struck a Joshua tree not 50 yards away, the explosion of wood and fire, sending Buttermilk into a terrified rear. Ethan held on barely, but when the mare came down, she was running, not after the cattle, but away from everything, pure animal panic driving her into the desert. He pulled the reins, shouted, tried everything his father had taught him about controlling a spooked horse, but Buttermilk had the bit in her teeth and terror in her heart. They ran for what felt like hours, but was probably minutes, through arroyos rapidly filling with flash floodwater over rocks that sent sparks from Buttermilk's shoes between cacti that tore at Ethan's chaps. When the mare finally stopped, sides heaving and foam dripping from her mouth, Ethan had no idea where they were. The storm still raged, but they were in different country now, rougher with tall rock formations and narrow canyons he didn't recognize. The cattle, the crew, everything familiar had vanished into the storm's fury. He was alone, soaked to the skin and lost in what he was pretty sure was Apache territory. "Easy, girl," he whispered to Buttermilk, stroking her neck. "We're okay. We're gonna be okay." But he didn't believe it. Every cowboy on the frontier knew what happened to white men caught alone in Apache land. The stories were told around every campfire, each one worse than the last. Men staked out over anthills, skinned alive, burned slowly over mesquite fires. Jake Morrison himself had a scar across his chest from an Apache arrow, and he was one of the lucky ones. Thunder crashed again, and Ethan saw illuminated by lightning what looked like a cave entrance in the rock face ahead. It wasn't much, maybe 12 feet wide and going back into darkness, but it was shelter. He guided Buttermilk toward it, having to dismount and lead her the last few yards, when the entrance proved too low for a mounted rider. Inside the cave opened up into a larger chamber, maybe 20 feet deep and 15 feet wide. The floor was sandy, relatively dry, despite the storm, and littered with old bones deer or antelope from the look of them. The remains of an old fire pit sat near the back wall, the ashes long cold, but proof that others had used this shelter before. Ethan tied Buttermilk to a rock projection near the entrance where she could see out but was protected from the wind. He unsaddled her, checking her legs for cuts or swelling, finding only minor scrapes that could wait for proper tending. His saddlebags were soaked but intact, some jerky hardtack, a can of peaches he'd been saving, and most importantly, his father's Colt 45 wrapped in oilcloth. He was checking the loads in the Colt when lightning flashed again, and he saw her. She stood at the back of the cave, so still he'd mistaken her for Shadow. An Apache woman, young, maybe his age or a bit younger, wearing a doeskin dress decorated with beadwork that caught the brief light. Her long black hair hung loose and wet, and even in the darkness he could see the knife in her hand. Ethan's heart stopped. His hand tightened on the Colt, but he didn't raise it. Couldn't really. His arm felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I don't want trouble, he said, his voice cracking like he was 13 again. Just getting out of the storm. She didn't move, didn't speak. Lightning flashed again, giving him a better look at her face. Beautiful, but something was wrong. Her left eye was swollen nearly shut, purple bruising spreading down her cheek. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and there was dried blood on her arm. "You're hurt," he said, then felt stupid. Of course she was hurt. The question was who had hurt her, and were they coming after her? She spoke then a stream of Apache words he didn't understand, but the tone was clear. "Stay back. Don't come closer." The knife wavered slightly in her hand, and he realized she was trembling. From cold fear or pain, he couldn't tell. Maybe all three. "I'm not going to hurt you," Ethan said slowly, setting the Colt down on a rock, making sure she could see him do it. "See no gun." She watched him with her good eye dark and suspicious. Said something else in Apache, shorter this time, almost a question. "I don't understand," Ethan said. "English habla español?" She tilted her head slightly, then said in accented but clear English, "You are lost white man." "Yes," Ethan admitted. "Lost as a man can be. My horse spooked in the storm and—" He gestured vaguely outside where the rain still poured. "You speak English." "Mission school." She said the two words carrying a weight of history he couldn't fully understand. Before what? She didn't answer, just kept watching him with that one good eye. The knife hadn't lowered. "What's your name?" he tried. "Names have power. I don't give mine to enemies." "We don't have to be enemies." She actually laughed at that, a bitter sound that hurt to hear. "White man and Apache. We are born enemies. Your people made it so." Ethan couldn't argue with that. He'd heard enough stories, seen enough to know she was right. But here in this cave with the storm raging outside, those big hatreds seemed smaller somehow. "My name's Ethan," he said. "Ethan Cole. I ride for the Carter Company out of Texas, or I did until about an hour ago." "Texas," she repeated, and something flickered in her expression. "You are far from home, Ethan Cole of Texas." "What about you?" "Are you far from home?" The question hit something raw. Her face hardened, and for a moment he thought she might actually use the knife. Then her shoulders sagged slightly. Exhaustion or pain breaking through her guard. "I have no home," she said quietly. "Not anymore." The storm chose that moment to intensify thunder so loud it made dust fall from the cave ceiling. Buttermilk whinnied in fear, pulling against her rope. Ethan moved to calm her, very aware of the Apache woman watching his every move. When he'd gotten the mare settled, he turned back to find she'd moved, not toward him, but to the side, putting more rock between them. "Look," Ethan said, "we're both stuck here until this storm passes. I've got some food, not much, but you're welcome to share. And I've got medical supplies in my saddlebags if you need them for—" He gestured vaguely at her injuries. "Why?" she asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "Why would you share with an Apache?" It was a fair question. Everything he'd been taught, every story he'd heard, said he should be trying to kill her or capture her, not offering her his food. But looking at her hurt and a lone knife held in a trembling hand, all he could see was another human being caught in the same storm. "My father," Ethan said slowly, "died when I was 15. Last thing he told me was that a man's character isn't shown in how he treats his friends, but how he treats people who can't do anything for him or to him. Right now, we're both just people trying to survive a storm. She studied him for a long moment. Your father was unusual for a white man. He was unusual for any kind of man, Ethan agreed. So food, I promise it's not poisoned or anything. Just trail rations, but it's better than nothing. Slowly, so slowly, she lowered the knife. Not putting it away, he noticed just lowering it to her side. She paused, clearly wrestling with something. I am called Ayana. Ayana, he repeated, probably mangling the pronunciation. That's a beautiful name. It means eternal bloom in my language, she said, then added with that bitter laugh again, my mother had hope when she named me. False hope. Ethan dug into his saddlebags, pulling out the jerky hardtack, and after a moment's hesitation, the can of peaches. He divided everything evenly, setting her portion on a flat rock between them, close enough for her to reach far enough that she wouldn't feel threatened. The peaches are the best part, he said. Been saving them for 2 weeks. She looked at the food, then at him, suspicion still clear in her face. You eat first. He almost argued, then realized trust had to be earned. He took a bite of jerky, a piece of hardtack, then opened the peaches with his knife and took a sip of the syrup before setting it with her portion. Ayana waited another moment, then moved forward carefully, that knife still in her hand. She took the food back to her spot against the wall, and they ate in silence, broken only by the storm outside. The peach juice seemed to do something to her, maybe the sweetness after however long she'd been without proper food. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and she actually closed her eyes for a moment, savoring it. Thank you, she said quietly, and he could tell those words didn't come easily. How long since you ate? He asked. 2 days, maybe 3. The days blur together when you're running. Running from what? Her eye hardened again. That is not your concern, white man. It might be if whoever you're running from shows up here. She considered that, then shook her head. They won't follow, not in this storm. And after... She touched her swollen eye gingerly. After what I did, they'll let me go. I'm dead to them now anyway. There was a story there, obviously, but Ethan didn't push. Instead, he pulled out his medical kit, a small leather pouch with some bandages, a needle and thread, and a bottle of whiskey for cleaning wounds. That cut on your arm needs cleaning, he said. It's going to fester if you leave it. I've had worse. I'm sure you have, but that doesn't mean you should let this one go bad. Infection kills more people out here than bullets or arrows. She looked at the medical supplies, then at him. You would have to come close to treat it. Yes. I still have my knife. I noticed. They stared at each other across the cave, and Ethan realized this was the moment when everything would be decided. Either she trusted him enough to let him help, or they spent the rest of the storm as armed strangers, wary and waiting. Finally, she moved forward, stopping just within his reach, but angled so she could retreat quickly. The knife stayed in her left hand while she extended her right arm, where a deep gash ran from elbow to wrist. This is going to hurt, Ethan warned, uncorking the whiskey. Pain is an old friend, she said simply. He poured the whiskey over the wound, and she didn't even flinch, though he saw her jaw tighten. The cut was worse up close, deep, and already showing signs of infection. He cleaned it as best he could, then used the needle and thread to put in 6 rough stitches. His hand shook a little. He'd sewn up horses and cattle, even himself once, but never another person, never a woman. You've done this before, she observed, watching him work. On animals, mostly. Once on my own leg when I got caught by barbed wire. Your hands are gentle, she said, and it sounded like the observation surprised her. Most white men's hands only know violence when they touch Apache skin. Most Apache hands aren't too gentle with white skin either, Ethan pointed out, tying off the last stitch. True, she admitted. We have made a religion of hating each other. He bandaged the wound with a strip of relatively clean cloth from his saddlebag. This close, he could smell her sage and smoke, and something else, something wild like the desert after rain. Her face, despite the bruising, was striking high cheekbones, a strong jaw, those dark eyes that seemed to see everything and trust nothing. Your face, he said. No, she said sharply, pulling back. The face heals on its own or not at all. She retreated to her spot against the wall, but something had changed. The knife was sheathed. Now he realized tucked into her belt. A small gesture, but in their current situation, it meant everything. The storm raged on. Water had begun to trickle into the cave entrance, nothing dangerous yet, but enough to make Buttermilk nervous again. Ethan moved his saddle and bags farther back closer to where Ayana sat. "This storm," she said suddenly. "It's not natural." "What do you mean?" "The spirits are angry. Can't you feel it?" "This is punishment, rain washing something away." Ethan wasn't superstitious by nature, but something about the storm did feel different, more violent than any he'd experienced, more purposeful somehow. "Maybe it's washing us both away from our old lives," he said, not really meaning to say it out loud. She looked at him sharply. "You believe in fate, white man?" "I believe in luck, good and bad." "Don't know if that's the same thing." "It's not," she said firmly. "Fate is chosen by the spirits before we're born. Luck is what we make of what fate gives us." "Then what does fate say about an Apache woman and a white man sharing a cave?" "That the spirits have a sense of humor," she said, and for the first time there was something almost like a smile on her face. Not quite, but close. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm. Ethan found himself stealing glances at her, trying to piece together her story from the clues: the mission school English, the ceremonial dress that suggested she was someone important, the wounds that said she'd fought to get away from something or someone. "You're staring," she said without looking at him. "Sorry, just trying to figure you out." "Don't. You wouldn't like what you found." "Try me." She turned to look at him fully, then both eyes opened despite the swelling. "I was to be married, today actually, to a war chief named Red Knife, a man 40 years my senior who already has 3 wives, a man who thinks women are like horses to be broken and ridden." Ethan felt his jaw clench. "But you ran." "I fought," she corrected. "When he came to claim me early before the ceremony, I fought. His face will carry my marks forever if he lives. I think I might have killed him. I hope I did." "Good," Ethan said, and meant it. She blinked, surprised. "You approve of an Apache woman trying to kill an Apache chief." "I approve of anyone fighting back against someone trying to force them into something. Don't matter what color their skin is." "You really are unusual for a white man." "Maybe. Or maybe you've just been meeting the wrong white men." "All white men are the wrong white men to my people," she said, but there was less heat in it now. "Just as all Apaches are the wrong Apache to yours. Yet here we are." "Yes," she said softly. "Here we are." The storm began to slacken around midnight, though Ethan only knew the time because of his father's pocket watch. The rain still fell, but the thunder had moved on, and the lightning was just occasional flashes in the distance. Buttermilk had finally calmed enough to doze standing up, and the cave had taken on an almost peaceful quality. Ethan had spread his bedroll on the sandy floor not to sleep. He didn't trust the situation that much, but to have something dry to sit on. After a while, Ayana had moved closer, still maintaining distance, but near enough that they could talk without raising their voices over the storm. "Tell me about Texas," she said suddenly. "What about it?" "I've never been. Never been anywhere really, except the mission school in Santa Fe, and that was not a place to learn about the world." So Ethan told her about Texas, about the rolling hills covered in bluebonnets in spring, about the vast ranches where cattle numbered in the thousands, about the growing towns with their saloons and general stores and Sunday churches. He told her about his mother's garden in San Antonio, where she grew tomatoes so red they looked like they'd been painted, and about the live oak tree behind their house where he'd built a fort as a boy. "You miss it," she observed, "every day. But there was nothing left for me there after my parents died. Their land got taken for back taxes, and I didn't have the money to fight it, so I became a cowboy, figuring I'd save enough to buy my own spread someday. And will you—" He laughed, but it wasn't bitter like hers, just rueful. "At the rate I'm going, maybe when I'm 60, if I live that long." "You won't," she said matter-of-factly. "Cowboys die young, Apache warriors too. It's the way of things." "That's cheerful." "It's honest. Life is short and brutal for people like us. the ones who don't fit neat into the world's plans. What do you mean, people like us? She was quiet for a moment, then said, You're a dreamer. I can see it in your eyes. You dream of land and cattle and a life that's your own. But the world doesn't like dreamers. It breaks them against reality. You're a dreamer too, Ethan said, or you wouldn't have fought against that marriage. No, she said. I was a dreamer. The mission school beat that out of me. And my people finished the job when they decided I was too whitewashed to be truly Apache, but too Apache to ever be anything else. So what are you now? Nothing, she said simply. I'm nothing now, ghost walking between two worlds welcome in neither. The pain in her voice was so raw it made Ethan's chest hurt. Without thinking, he reached out, not quite touching her, but his hand opened between them in offer. She looked at his hand for a long moment, then slowly, so slowly placed her fingertips against his palm. The touch was electric, sending a jolt through him that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with connection, two lost souls recognizing each other in the dark. You're not nothing, he said firmly. You're Ayana. Eternal bloom, remember. Your mother saw something in you worth naming that. She pulled her hand back, but gently. My mother died when I was 12. Killed by white soldiers who mistook our gathering party for a war band. We were picking berries. I'm sorry. Why, you didn't kill her? No, but people who looked like me did. That's enough to be sorry for. She studied him in the dim light. You carry guilt for things you didn't do. Don't you? That stopped her. She was quiet for a long while, then said, Yes. I carry my father's guilt for not fighting harder against the reservation. I carry my guilt for learning English, for sometimes thinking in English now, for looking at you and not seeing an enemy. That last admission hung between them like a physical thing. Ethan's heart was pounding, and he didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Sometimes silence was better than words. The rain had almost stopped now, just a light drizzle pattering at the cave entrance. Soon they'd have to decide what came next. He needed to find his crew if they'd survived the storm. She needed to. What? Where did an Apache woman go when she'd been cast out by her own people? What will you do, he asked, when the storm ends? Die, probably, she said with that matter-of-fact tone again. Either from exposure or animals, or when Red Knife's brothers come looking for revenge. It doesn't matter. I chose my path when I chose to fight. You could come with me. The words were out before he could stop them, hanging in the air like something fragile and dangerous. Ayana's eye widened, the swollen one opening as much as it could. Come with you, she repeated slowly like she was tasting the words. A white cowboy and an Apache woman. Yes, that would end well. I could take you to a town. Fort Sumner, maybe, or... So I could be a laundress, a whore. Those are the only jobs for Apache women in white towns. No, I didn't mean... I know what you meant, she said softer now. And it's kind. But kindness doesn't change reality. Your people would never accept me. And even if they did, I wouldn't accept them. Too much blood between us. She was right, of course. Ethan knew it even as he'd made the offer. But something about her about this moment made him want to pretend the world was different than it was. The trading post, he said, suddenly remembering. Garrison's trading post about a day's ride north of here. The old man who runs it married a Mexican woman. They don't care about nobody's politics or race or nothing long as you got money or goods to trade. You could go there at least for a while, figure out your next move. She considered this. I know of Garrison's. My people trade there sometimes, though not happily. He charges too much. He charges everyone too much. That's how you know he doesn't discriminate. That got an actual smile from her, small but real. You're determined to save me, aren't you? I'm determined to give you a chance. What you do with it is up to you. And what do you get out of it? Ethan thought about that. What did he get? Nothing tangible. Would probably cause him trouble if anyone found out. But looking at her bruised and fierce and somehow still unbroken, he knew the answer. I get to be the man my father wanted me to be, he said simply. She was quiet for a long moment, then stood, walked to the cave entrance and looked out at the dying storm. It'll clear by dawn. You should sleep. I'll keep watch. I don't need... Yes, you do? You've been fighting to stay awake for the last hour. Sleep. I won't kill you. Comforting. I won't rob you either. Your goods are worthless to me except the food which you already shared. Ethan wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at him hard now that the immediate danger seemed past. He stretched out on his bedroll, keeping his boots on, and his hand near the Colt out of habit more than real fear. Ayana, he said as his eyes started to close. Yes. Thank you for trusting me enough to let me help. She was silent so long he thought she wouldn't answer, then so quiet he almost missed it. Thank you for seeing me as human. When Ethan woke, the first gray light of dawn was filtering into the cave. The storm had passed, leaving that clean, sharp smell the desert got after rain. He sat up momentarily disoriented, then remembered everything in a rush. Ayana was gone. His heart sank, though he shouldn't have been surprised. Of course she'd left. What had he expected, that she'd wait around for him to escort her to safety, like some storybook damsel? She was Apache. She'd probably been gone for hours, could be miles away by now. Then he saw it. On the flat rock where he'd placed her food the night before she'd left something. He walked over, picked it up. It was a small beaded pouch, the kind Apache women used to carry sacred items. Inside was a single eagle feather and a small piece of turquoise. Buttermilk nickered, and Ethan turned to see Ayana standing at the cave entrance, silhouetted against the morning light. She'd washed the blood from her face and braided her hair, and despite the bruises, she looked regal was the only word for it. I thought you'd left, he said. I did. I came back. Why? She walked into the cave, moving with that liquid grace he'd noticed the night before. I prayed with the dawn, asked the spirits for guidance. They reminded me that debts must be paid. You don't owe me anything. I owe you my life. Twice over, once for the food when I was starving, once for tending my wounds. Among my people that creates a bond. I told you I don't want... I know what you want, she interrupted. You want to help because it makes you feel good, feel righteous. But that's not how the world works. Debts must be balanced. She pulled out her knife, and for a wild moment, Ethan thought she meant to attack him after all. But instead, she cut a lock of her hair, braided it quickly with practiced fingers, and held it out to him. Take this, she said. I don't understand. It's a protection charm. My hair carries my medicine, my spirit. As long as you carry it, you're under my protection. Any Apache who sees it will know you helped one of our women. It might save your life someday. Ethan took the braid, feeling the weight of what she was giving him. This doesn't balance us. This makes me more in your debt. Then we're bound to each other, she said simply. Neither owing, both owing. It's the best we can do in this world. They stood there close enough to touch, but not touching, and Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Something fundamental like a bone setting back into place after being broken. Come to the trading post with me, he said. Not for safety, not because you need help. Come because I want more time. To know you, to understand how someone can be so strong after being so broken. I'm not strong, she said. I'm just too stubborn to die. Same thing, isn't it? That got another smile from her. Perhaps. So you'll come? She looked out at the desert, painted gold and pink by the rising sun. The spirits brought us together in this storm. It would be foolish to ignore their message. Yes, Ethan Cole of Texas. I'll travel with you to Garrison's, but after that we part ways. Agreed. Agreed, Bus, he said, though something in him rebelled against the words. They prepared to leave Ethan saddling Buttermilk, while Ayana gathered what few possessions she had. The knife, a water gourd, a blanket that had seen better days. When he offered to let her ride while he walked, she gave him a look that could have scorched stone. I'm Apache. We walk distances your people can't imagine. Save your horse's strength. You'll need it if we run into trouble. So they set out into the dawn, an unlikely pair crossing the desert, a young cowboy on a paint mare and an Apache woman walking beside them, both carrying bruises, visible and invisible, both running from lives that no longer fit. The desert was transformed by the storm. Flowers that had been dormant for months suddenly bloomed, painting the sand with splashes of yellow and purple and white. Birds called from the bushes, celebrating the water, and even the air seemed lighter, cleaner. "It's beautiful," Ethan said, then felt foolish for stating the obvious. "The desert is always beautiful," Ayana said. "Most people just can't see it. They see death and emptiness. But there's more life here than anywhere, if you know how to look." She showed him as they walked the tiny tracks of kangaroo rats in the sand, the place where a roadrunner had caught a lizard, the barrel cactus that could save a man's life with its water if he knew how to get past the spines. She moved through the landscape like she was part of it, never stumbling, never uncertain. "You love this place when," he observed. "It's my home, was my home. Even when they sent me to the mission school, I dreamed of the desert. The nuns tried to beat it out of me, make me dream of their green fields and stone buildings. But you can't beat the desert out of an Apache. It's in our blood." "Tell me about the school." Her face darkened. "Why?" "Because I want to understand. Because stories shared make the walking easier. Because—" he struggled for the right words. "Because you know about my home, my dreams. Seems only fair I know about yours." She walked in silence for a while, and he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she began to speak, her voice flat, almost emotionless. "I was 8 when they took me. Soldiers came to the reservation, said all children had to go to school, learn to be civilized. My father tried to hide me, but they found us. Dragged me from under the wagon where he'd put me. I screamed for him, but he couldn't fight. None of them could. The soldiers had guns, and we'd already surrendered our weapons." She paused to navigate around a cluster of prickly pear, and Ethan noticed how her fingers clenched and unclenched as she spoke. "The school was in Santa Fe. Big white buildings like tombs. First thing they did was cut our hair. All of it. Shaved us like sheep. Hair is sacred to Apache. It holds our power, our connection to the spirits. They knew that. That's why they did it." "Jesus," Ethan muttered. "No, not Jesus," she said with bitter humor. "Jesus would have wept at what they did in his name. They forbid us to speak Apache. If they caught us, they'd beat us with switches or lock us in a dark closet for days with no food. They dressed us in white clothes, made us sit in hard chairs, learn letters that meant nothing, taught us to be ashamed of everything we were." "How long were you there?" 4 years. Some children died from sickness, from sadness, from just giving up. I survived by splitting myself in 2. There was the girl who spoke English, who said prayers to their God, who learned to read and write and do sums. And there was Ayana hidden deep inside, who remembered the stories, the songs, the feel of desert sand between her toes. "But you got out." "My father came for me. Rode 3 days without stopping, walked into that school like he owned it. Said his daughter's education was complete and he was taking her home. They tried to stop him, but he had papers, some treaty clause he'd found that said parents could reclaim their children after 4 years if they showed proper progress. I'd learned their language better than most of the white children there, so they couldn't claim I hadn't progressed." "Smart man, your father." "He was. But bringing me home killed him in a different way. I wasn't the daughter he'd lost anymore. I spoke English in my sleep. I forgot some of the Apache words. I flinched when the other children played rough, because the school had taught me to be still, be quiet, be invisible. He looked at me and saw what they'd taken, and it broke his heart. He died 2 years later. I think he just gave up." They walked in silence after that, Ethan processing the weight of her story. He'd heard about the Indian schools, of course, but in vague terms, civilizing the savages, bringing them into modern society. He'd never thought about what that meant for the children, for the families torn apart. The sun climbed higher and the heat began to build. They stopped at a small spring Ayana knew about, refilling their water and letting Buttermilk drink. Ethan watched Ayana kneel by the water, saw how she whispered something, a prayer or thanks before drinking. "You still believe," he said. "In the spirits the Apache ways, despite everything." "Belief isn't something you choose," she said. "It's something you are. I could no more stop believing in the spirits than I could stop breathing. The mission school taught me about their God, and maybe he exists too. But he's not my God. My gods are in the wind and the stone and the growing things." "Must be nice," Ethan said, then realized how that sounded. "I mean, having that certainty, that connection to something bigger." "You don't believe in anything." "I used to. Went to church with my mother every Sunday, read the Bible, said my prayers. But then she got sick, and I prayed harder than I'd ever prayed for anything, promised God everything if he'd just let her live. She died anyway, slow and painful. Hard to believe in a God who'd let that happen. The spirits don't promise to save us from pain, Ayana said. They just promise that the pain has meaning even if we can't see it. That's a cold comfort. It's the only comfort there is. They traveled through the heat of the day, Ayana setting a pace that had Ethan sweating through his shirt despite riding. She never complained, never asked to rest, though he could see the strain in how she held herself, the slight limp she tried to hide. "Your feet are bleeding," he said when he noticed red marks in her footprints. "They'll toughen." "Get on the horse." "No." "Ayana, there's no shame in—" I said no. She stopped walking, turned to face him. "You don't understand. If I ride your horse, I become weak, dependent. I've been dependent on others' charity my whole life, first the reservation agents, then the mission school, then my father trying to find me a husband who would take a ruined woman. No more. I walk on my own feet or not at all." Ethan wanted to argue, but he recognized the pride in her voice. It was the same pride that had made him leave Texas rather than beg for work from the men who'd taken his family's land. "All right," he said, "but we're stopping for the night soon. Your feet won't do you any good if they're too damaged to carry you tomorrow." She nodded, accepting the compromise. They made camp in a cluster of rocks that provided shade and some protection from view. Ethan unsaddled Buttermilk and set her to graze on the sparse grass, then started gathering wood for a fire. "No fire," Ayana said. "Not in the open like this. It'll get cold when the sun goes down. Cold is better than dead. Fire can be seen for miles in the dark. And there are those who might be looking. Red Knife's brothers, she meant, or his war band if he'd survived." Ethan put the wood aside, pulled out the last of his food instead. The jerky was nearly gone and the hardtack wasn't much better. They'd need supplies soon. "Garrison's is still a day away," he said. "Maybe more at our current pace." "I can find food," Ayana said. "The desert provides if you know how to ask." She proved it by disappearing for an hour and returning with her blanket full of roots, some kind of beans, and a handful of small round fruits Ethan didn't recognize. "Prickly pear fruit," she explained, showing him how to peel away the spiny skin to get to the sweet flesh inside. "And these are mesquite beans. Not much flavor, but they'll fill your stomach." They ate as the sun set, painting the desert in shades of fire. Without a fire, the darkness came quickly once the sun disappeared and the temperature dropped just as fast. Ethan pulled out his bedroll, offered it to Ayana. "We can share," she said pragmatically. "Body heat is better than freezing." It shouldn't have been a charged moment. It was pure survival, nothing more. But as they arranged themselves on the bedroll back to back for warmth and propriety, Ethan was acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched. Her hair smelled of sage and desert wind, and he could feel her breathing steady and deep. "Ethan," she said quietly in the darkness. "Yeah." "What you said in the cave about wanting to be the man your father wanted you to be. What kind of man was that?" Ethan thought about it, remembering his father's weathered face, his work-hardened hands, the way he'd always stood up straight even when his back hurt from a day in the fields. "A good man," he said finally. "That's all. Not rich or powerful or famous. Just good. Someone who did the right thing even when it cost him. Someone who kept his word, protected those who needed protecting, and never forgot that everyone white, Mexican, Indian, Negro, everyone was human and deserved to be treated as such." "The world doesn't have much use for good men," Ayana said. "No," Ethan agreed. "It doesn't. Might be why he died young. Do you think it's worth it? Being good in a world that punishes goodness?" "Ask me tomorrow," Ethan said. "When we get to Garrison's and I have to watch you walk away." She was quiet for a long moment. Then he felt her turn and felt her hand touch his shoulder briefly. "You're already a good man, Ethan Cole. Your father would be proud." Before he could respond, she'd turned back, and soon her breathing deepened into sleep. Ethan lay awake much longer, watching the stars wheel overhead, feeling the warmth of her against his back, and wondering how a single day could change everything he thought he knew about the world and his place in it. He must have dozed because he woke to Ayana's hand on his mouth, her lips close to his ear, whispering, "Someone's coming." Ethan's hand moved instinctively toward his Colt, but Ayana pressed it down, shaking her head. In the starlight, he could barely make out her face, but her tension was palpable. She pointed toward the south, where he could now hear it too, horses moving slow but steady through the desert. "How many?" he whispered. "3, maybe 4. Her voice was barely a breath. Apache ponies by the sound. His blood turned cold. Red Knife's brothers had to be, coming for revenge just as she'd predicted. He started to rise, but again she held him down. "They don't know exactly where we are," she whispered. "The rocks hide us. If we stay still, stay quiet, they might pass." So they lay there barely breathing as the sound of horses grew closer. Ethan could hear voices now speaking Apache, harsh and angry. Beside him, Ayana had gone rigid as stone. The horses stopped maybe 50 yards away. More voices and argument by the sound of it. Then footsteps. Someone had dismounted and was walking through the rocks searching. Ayana's hand found his in the darkness, squeezed once, then let go. She rolled silently off the bedroll, her knife appearing in her hand like magic. She looked at him, and even in the starlight, he could read her intention. She was going to lead them away, sacrifice herself so he could escape. Like hell she was. Ethan grabbed her wrist, pulled her back down. When she tried to protest, he put his finger to her lips, then pointed to Buttermilk. The mare was hidden behind a large boulder, but if the searcher came much closer, he'd find her. And once they found the horse, finding the riders wouldn't take long. The footsteps came closer, boots scraping on rock. Ethan could see the man's silhouette now, tall and lean rifle in his hands. Another few steps, and he'd have a clear view of their hiding spot. Ethan made a decision that went against every instinct for self-preservation he had. He stood up, hands visible, but near his gun, and called out, "That's close enough, friend." The Apache warrior spun rifle coming up, and Ethan heard the others running toward them. Within seconds, they were surrounded, 4 Apache warriors, all armed, all looking like they'd gladly skin him alive. One of them, older than the others, with gray streaking his hair, said something sharp in Apache. Ayana stood slowly, and Ethan heard several of the warriors inhale sharply when they recognized her. The older one spoke again, longer this time, his voice carrying a mix of anger and something else, disappointment maybe. Ayana responded in Apache, her voice steady but defiant. The conversation went back and forth, growing more heated, and Ethan caught Red Knife's name several times. Finally, Ayana turned to him. "They're his brothers. Come to bring me back for justice." "What kind of justice?" "The kind that ends with me dead eventually, after they've had their satisfaction." "Then they'll have to go through me," Ethan said, his hand moving to his Colt. The older warrior laughed, said something in broken English. "One white boy, you die quick." "Maybe," Ethan agreed, "but I'll take at least one of you with me. Maybe 2 if I'm lucky. Question is, which of you wants to be the one who dies for this?" "She is Apache," the warrior said. "She belongs to us, not white man." "She belongs to herself," Ethan said firmly, "and she's chosen her path." The warrior's eyes narrowed. "You claim her white man claims Apache woman." Ethan felt Ayana stiffen beside him, knew he was walking on dangerous ground. But something in him, something that had been growing since that first moment in the cave, made him say, "Yes, I claim her, as my woman under my protection. Any harm to her is harm to me." The silence that followed was deafening. The warriors looked at each other clearly, not having expected this. The older one spoke rapidly in Apache to the others, and an argument erupted. Ayana grabbed Ethan's arm, whispered urgently, "You don't know what you're saying. To claim an Apache woman means—" "I know what it means," he said, though he really didn't, not fully. All he knew was that he couldn't let them take her. The older warrior held up his hand for silence, then approached them. This close, Ethan could see the scars on his face, the weight of years and battles in his eyes. "You would fight for her?" "Yes." "Die for her?" "Yes." "Kill for her?" Ethan met his gaze steadily, already planning on it. The warrior studied him for a long moment, then said something to Ayana in Apache. She responded, her voice shaking slightly. The warrior nodded, then spoke to the others. 2 of them protested violently, but he cut them off with a sharp gesture. "I am Black Wolf. he said to Ethan. Brother to Red Knife. He lives but barely. She... He gestured to Ayanna with clear disgust. She fought like a man, like a warrior. This is unprecedented. Sounds like he got what he deserved, Ethan said. Black Wolf's hand went to his knife, but he didn't draw it. You speak of things you don't understand, white man. I understand forcing a woman into marriage is wrong, no matter what color she is or what your customs say. Our customs are not for you to judge. And yet here we are judging each other. Black Wolf was quiet for a moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile, but there was respect in it. You have courage, white man. Stupid courage, but courage nonetheless. Tell me, what is your name? Ethan Cole. Ethan Cole. Black Wolf tasted the name like he was memorizing it. You should know that by claiming her, you've made yourself an enemy of our band. Red Knife will heal, and when he does, he'll come for you both. Let him come. You don't fear death. I fear living as a coward more. Black Wolf nodded slowly, then turned to Ayanna. What he said to her in Apache was long and complex, but Ethan caught the tone-warning threat, and strangest of all, a kind of grudging acceptance. When he was done, Ayanna bowed her head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. Black Wolf turned back to Ethan. We go now. But know this, she is cut off. No Apache will help her trade with her, acknowledge her. She is dead to us. And you, white man, you are marked. Every Apache will know you as the one who stole a woman from Red Knife. Your life will be very short and very difficult. It was already looking that way, Ethan said. Black Wolf laughed a genuine sound this time. Perhaps you're not as stupid as you look. He turned to his warriors, barked a command. They clearly didn't like it, but they moved back toward their horses. Before mounting, Black Wolf looked back. The trading post. Garrisons. That's where you're going. Ethan tensed but didn't answer. Black Wolf nodded as if he had. We won't follow. Not there. Garrison is neutral ground. But after, he shrugged, after your fair game. They mounted and rode off, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as they'd come. Ethan stood there, heart pounding, until the sound of hooves faded completely. Then his knees gave out and he sat down hard on a rock. You're insane, Ayanna said, but there was something in her voice, wonder maybe, or fear. You just signed your own death warrant. Probably. Ethan agreed, his hand shaking now that the immediate danger was past. But they were going to kill you. That was my fate to face. Not anymore. He looked up at her. Now it's our fate. She stared at him for a long moment, then sat down beside him closer than she'd ever voluntarily been before. You claimed me, she said quietly. Do you understand what that means in Apache culture? I'm guessing it's pretty serious. It means you're responsible for me. My actions reflect on you. My shame is your shame. My enemies are your enemies. Sounds like marriage, Ethan said, trying for lightness. It's more binding than your white marriages, she said seriously. There's no divorce from an Apache claim. It's for life, however short that might be now. The weight of what he had done started to sink in. He'd just tied himself to a woman he'd known for less than 2 days, made enemies of an entire Apache band, and probably shortened his already uncertain life expectancy to weeks, maybe days. Do you regret it? Ayanna asked. Ethan thought about it. Really thought about it. Looked at her in the starlight, this fierce, broken, incredible woman who'd somehow become essential to him in such a short time. No, he said simply. I don't regret it. She was quiet for a moment, then leaned against his shoulder. It was a small gesture, but from her it meant everything. You really are unusual for a white man, Ethan Cole. You're pretty unusual for anyone, Ayanna. They sat there until dawn, neither sleeping, both processing how completely their worlds had just changed. When the sun rose, painting the desert in gold and pink, they broke camp in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The journey to Garrisons took on a different quality now. They were no longer temporary traveling companions, but something else, something neither had words for. Ayanna still walked, still refused to ride, but she walked closer to Buttermilk, occasionally resting her hand on the mare's neck. "Tell me about Garrison," Ethan said as the sun climbed higher. "He's old. Older than the rocks, some say. Been running that trading post since before the Apache Wars. Some say he was a mountain man. Others say he was a soldier who deserted. Nobody knows for sure, and he doesn't tell. And his wife? Maria, Mexican from Sonora originally. They say she was married before that her husband was killed by bandits and Garrison saved her from them. But that might just be story. What's true is she cooks the best food you'll find in 100 miles and she doesn't tolerate fighting in her house." "Sounds like good people." "They're survivors," Ayanna corrected. "In this land that's better than good." They stopped at midday to rest in the shade of a large boulder. Ethan shared the last of his water with Ayanna, noticed how she only took a small sip despite her obvious thirst. "Drink more," he said. "We'll reach Garrison's before dark." "If we reach Garrison's, Black Wolf might have been lying about not following." "You think he was—" She considered. "No, Black Wolf is many things, but he keeps his word. It's Red Knife we need to worry about, and he won't be healed enough to travel for weeks. So we have time. A little. But Ethan—" She turned to face him fully. "What's your plan?" "You can't go back to your cattle crew now. Not with me. They'd never accept it." She was right, of course. Jake Morrison was a fair man, but there were limits to fairness on the frontier. Bringing an Apache woman into camp would be crossing every line there was. "I'll figure something out," Ethan said. "That's not a plan." "It's the best I've got right now." She shook her head but didn't argue further. They traveled on through the afternoon heat, the landscape gradually changing from open desert to more broken country mesas and canyons and clusters of cottonwoods that marked hidden springs. "We're close," Ayanna said, pointing to a thin column of smoke rising in the distance. "That's Garrison's chimney. Maria always keeps a fire going for cooking." As they got closer, Ethan could make out the trading post, a long, low building of adobe and rough timber with a corral attached, and what looked like a small garden beside it. It sat at the junction of two trails positioned to catch travelers going in any direction. "Busy place?" Ethan observed, noting several horses in the corral. "Trading day," Ayanna said. "Once a week people come from all around Apache Mexican white settlers. Garrison keeps the peace by threatening to ban anyone who causes trouble. And that works. His trading post is the only place to get supplies for 50 miles in any direction. Nobody wants to be banned." They approached carefully, Ethan aware of the picture they made: a dusty white cowboy and a bruised Apache woman. Sure enough, heads turned as they entered the trading post's yard. Conversations stopped. A Mexican vaquero crossed himself. Two white settlers backed away, hands moving to their guns. "Steady," Ayanna murmured. "Show no fear." Easier said than done, Ethan thought, but he kept his face calm as he dismounted, helping Ayanna even though she didn't need it, making it clear to everyone watching that they were together. The trading post door opened, and a woman emerged, short, round, with steel gray hair and a face that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Maria had to be. She took them in with one sweeping glance, then called back into the building in Spanish. A moment later, a man appeared, tall despite being stooped with age, with a beard that had gone completely white and eyes like chips of flint. Garrison looked at them for a long moment, then spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Well," he said in a voice like grinding rocks, "this is going to be interesting." He walked closer, circling them like he was examining horses for sale. Stopped in front of Ayanna, took in her bruises, the torn dress, the defiant set of her jaw. "Red Knife's woman," he said. It wasn't a question. "Not anymore," Ayanna said. "I can see that." He turned to Ethan. "You do this to her." "No, sir. Found her in a cave during the storm. We've been traveling together since." "Together," Garrison chewed on the word. "That's a dangerous word in these parts, boy." "I've claimed her," Ethan said, meeting the old man's gaze, "under Apache law." The yard went completely silent. Even the horses seemed to stop moving. Garrison's eyes widened slightly, the first real emotion he'd shown. "You claimed an Apache woman. You, a white boy who looks like he ain't been off his mama's tit more than a few years." "I'm old enough to know right from wrong." That's exactly what'll get you killed out here. Garrison studied him for another moment, then laughed a harsh barking sound. Maria, set 2 more places for dinner. We got us some fools need feeding. He turned and walked back toward the building, then stopped, looked back. You can sleep in the barn, both of you. Anybody has a problem with that, they can take it up with me. And boy, yes, sir. You better be prepared to back up that claim with blood. Word's gonna spread fast, and there's plenty on both sides who'll want to test you. Inside the trading post was organized chaos. Shelves lined the walls stocked with everything from ammunition to flour to fancy cloth from back east. Apache women examined beadwork while white settlers haggled over tool prices. Mexican traders argued in rapid Spanish over a stack of beaver pelts. And through it all, Maria moved like a force of nature, switching between English, Spanish, and Apache as needed, keeping the peace with a wooden spoon she wielded like a weapon. You sit, she commanded Ethan and Ayanna, pointing to a corner table. I bring food. You look like walking dead. She returned with bowls of something that smelled like heaven, a stew of beans and meat and peppers that made Ethan's stomach growl embarrassingly loud. There was fresh bread too, still warm, and coffee strong enough to resurrect the dead. Ayanna ate slowly, carefully, like someone who'd learned not to trust good fortune. But Ethan saw the way her eyes closed in pleasure at the first taste of bread, the way her shoulders finally relaxed. Good, Maria asked, though it clearly wasn't really a question. Very good, Ayanna said. Thank you. Maria looked at her more closely, and her expression softened. I have salve for those bruises, and a dress that isn't torn. You come with me after eating. I don't have money to pay. Did I ask for money? Maria's tone brooked no argument. You come. After they'd eaten, Maria led Ayanna to a back room while Ethan stayed at the table, aware of the stares and whispers around him. A group of white settlers at another table were talking just loud enough for him to hear. Apache whore. Probably killed white folks. Ought to string them both up. Ethan's hand moved to his Colt, but Garrison appeared beside him, setting down a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. Don't, the old man said quietly. You kill someone in my place, even in self-defense, and I have to ban you. Then you're really on your own. They're talking about... I know what they're talking about. They talk like that about Maria too when they think I can't hear, but they still come here, still trade with us because they need what we have. He poured 2 shots of whiskey. Drink. You look like you need it. The whiskey burned, but it was good burn settling Ethan's nerves. How long you been out here? Ethan asked. 40 years, give or take. Came out as a young man looking for beaver. Found this instead. He gestured to the trading post. Built it up piece by piece. Survived 2 wars, more Indian raids than I can count, bandits, drought floods. Still here. Any advice for someone just starting out? Garrison laughed. Go back where you came from. Can't do that? No, I suppose you can't. Not now. He poured another shot. Then my advice is this: don't try to be Apache and don't try to make her white. Find something in between, something new. It's the only way you'll survive. That's easier said than done. Everything out here is easier said than done, boy. That's what makes it interesting. Maria returned with Ayanna, and Ethan barely recognized her. The bruises were still there, but hidden under some kind of powder. Her hair was washed and braided in a style that was neither fully Apache nor Mexican, but something unique. And the dress, deep blue cotton with simple embroidery, made her look like a woman rather than a refugee. Beautiful, Ethan said without thinking, then felt his face heat up. Ayanna's own cheeks darkened, but she lifted her chin proudly. Maria is skilled. Maria is tired, the older woman said, but she was smiling. Come, I show you the barn. The barn was cleaner than most hotels Ethan had stayed in, with fresh hay in the loft and even a small stove for warmth. Maria brought them blankets and a basket of food for morning. You stay as long as you need, she said. Garrison grumbles, but he remembers being young and stupid in love. We're not... Ethan started, but Maria waved him off. You claim Apache woman you don't love, then you're stupider than you look. She left before he could respond. They settled into the loft as darkness fell, spreading their blankets on the hay. Through the barn's window they could see lights from the trading post where some travelers were staying the night. They'll all know by morning, Ayana said. Every person here will carry the story with them. Within a week, everyone for 100 miles will know about the white cowboy who claimed Red Knife's runaway bride. Scared, terrified, she admitted, but also, she paused, searching for words. Free. For the first time in my life, truly free. Whatever happens now, I chose it. We chose it, Ethan corrected. She looked at him in the dim light filtering through the window. Why did you do it, really? Not the noble answer you'd give others, but the truth. Ethan thought about it, trying to find words for something he didn't fully understand himself. When I saw you in that cave, he said slowly, knife in your hand, ready to fight, even though you were hurt and alone. I saw someone who refused to break, and when you lowered that knife, trusted me enough to let me help. I felt something I'd never felt before, like I'd been sleeping my whole life and suddenly woke up. That's not love, Ayana said. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's not love yet, Ethan agreed. But it's something. Something worth fighting for, worth risking everything for. Isn't that enough for now? She was quiet for a long moment, then moved closer to him on the blanket. Not touching, but close enough that he could feel her warmth. Among my people, she said, there's a saying. The spirits bring together those who need each other, not those who want each other. Perhaps that's what this is. Need. What do you need from me? Protection, obviously. A chance at a different life, but also, she hesitated, I need someone who sees me as I am, not as what I should be. Apaches see a woman who's too white. Whites see an Apache who's trying to be something she's not. You just see me. And what do I need? She turned to look at him fully. Purpose. You were drifting working cattle for other men's profit, dreaming of a future you'd never reach. Now you have something immediate, something real to fight for. You. Us, she corrected, whatever that becomes. They lay back on the blankets, looking up at the barn's rafters. Somewhere outside, a coyote howled and others answered their songs echoing across the desert. Tomorrow we need to decide where to go, Ayana said. We can't stay here long. I know. I've been thinking about it. There's a town called Tombstone down in Arizona Territory. Mining town, lots of people coming and going. Might be a place we could disappear, start fresh. Together. If you want. Or I could take you there, help you get settled, then move on if you'd rather. After claiming me, that would make you look weak, cowardly. The Apache would hunt you for sport. I don't care what I look like. Yes, you do, she said with certainty. You care very much about being the kind of man your father would respect. That's not a man who abandons his responsibilities. She was right, of course, but Ethan wanted her to stay because she wanted to, not because of obligation or Apache law or anything else. In Tombstone, he said, you could be anything, not Apache, not white, just Ayana. Maybe open a shop or work as a seamstress or be your woman, she said quietly, your wife in the white way. The word hung between them like something fragile and dangerous. Is that what you want? Ethan asked. I don't know what I want. For so long, all I wanted was to not marry Red Knife. Now that I have that, I don't know what comes next. She paused. What do you want? Time, Ethan said immediately. Time to know you better. Time to figure out if this thing between us is real or just desperation and circumstance. And if it's not real, then we part as friends and I'll have had the honor of knowing the strongest woman I've ever met. And if it is real, Ethan turned to look at her. Then we build something new. Not Apache, not white, but ours. She reached out, took his hand. Her fingers were calloused from work, scarred from life, but they fit perfectly with his. I would like that time, she said, to see who we might become. They fell asleep like that, hands linked while the desert night sang its ancient songs around them. In the morning, they would face the stairs and whispers would begin the journey to Tombstone and whatever waited there. But for now, in this moment, they were just two people who'd found each other in a storm and chosen to hold on despite the lightning. The next morning came too soon, bringing with it the sound of argument from the trading post. Ethan woke to find Ayana already up, standing by the barn window watching. Trouble? He asked. Maybe. There's a group of cowboys out there. They look angry. Ethan joined her at the window. Sure enough, 5 men on horseback were in heated discussion with Garrison. Even from here, Ethan could see the old man's hand resting on the shotgun he kept behind the door. Stay here, Ethan said, checking his Colt. No, we face this together or not at all. He wanted to argue, but the set of her jaw told him it would be pointless. They walked out of the barn together, and immediately the cowboys' attention shifted to them. That's him? One of them shouted. That's Cole. Ethan recognized him now. Bill Hawkins, who rode for the Lazy J Ranch. They'd shared a campfire once or twice on the trail. Bill, Ethan said, keeping his voice calm. Something I can help you with. Help? Bill spat. You can help by explaining what the hell you're doing with that Apache savage. Watch your mouth, Ethan warned. Or what, you'll shoot me. Go ahead and try. There's 5 of us and 1 of you. 6. Garrison set his shotgun, now visible. There's 6, and I'm betting on the boy and me. This ain't your fight, old man. Everything that happens on my property is my fight. Now state your business or move on. Bill looked frustrated but focused back on Ethan. Jake Morrison sent us. Says if you come back without the Apache, all's forgiven. He needs every hand for the drive. And if I don't, then you're fired, and we're supposed to make sure you know you're not welcome in any decent outfit from here to Kansas. Ethan felt Ayanna tense beside him, but didn't look at her. This was what he'd expected, but it still hurt. Jake had been good to him, and the crew was the closest thing to family he'd had since leaving Texas. Tell Jake I appreciate the offer, Ethan said, but I've made my choice. You're choosing a savage over your own kind. I'm choosing my own path. If that's too hard for you to understand, that's your problem, not mine. Bill's hand moved toward his gun, but Garrison's voice cracked like a whip. Pull that iron and you're banned for life, Hawkins. You and anyone who rides for the Lazy J. Bill's hand froze. The Lazy J depended on Garrison's post for supplies. Being banned would cripple them. This ain't over, Cole, Bill said. You've made yourself a lot of enemies today. I've made myself free, Ethan replied. That's worth any number of enemies. The cowboys rode off, but Ethan knew they'd be back, if not them, then others. The story would spread, getting worse with each telling. Soon he'd be the white traitor who'd chosen savage love over his own people, and she'd be the Apache witch who'd corrupted him. You could still go, Ayanna said quietly. Catch up with them, say you were confused, that no. The word came out harder than he intended. I made my choice in that cave when I shared my food with you. Everything since has just been confirming it. Even if it costs you everything. Everything I had wasn't worth much anyway. At least now I'm choosing my own losses. Garrison approached them, his expression unreadable. You two planning to stay another night? If you'll have us, Ethan said. 1 more night. After that, you're bad for business. Half my customers won't come if you're here. Understood. There's a wagon train heading to Tombstone tomorrow. Freight wagons mostly, but they take passengers. Might be safer than traveling alone. Might also be refused passage when they see us, Ayanna pointed out. The wagon master owes me favors, Garrison said. He'll take you if I ask. Whether the other passengers make trouble. He shrugged. That's your problem to handle. They spent the day preparing for the journey. Ethan traded some of his tack for supplies, ammunition, dried food, a bedroll for Ayanna, and most importantly, a sturdy pair of boots for her. These are too expensive, she protested when he presented them to her. Your feet are already torn up from walking barefoot. You need them. I've walked barefoot my whole life. Not across 100 miles of desert to Tombstone. She looked at the boots. Good leather, well made, the kind that would last years if cared for, and he saw her pride warring with practicality. They're not charity, he said, understanding her hesitation. They're an investment in our future. Can't build something new if you can't walk. That decided her. She put on the boots, walking carefully, as she got used to them. Maria helped showing her how to wrap her feet to prevent blisters, how to oil the leather to keep it supple. That evening they ate dinner with Garrison and Maria, a quiet meal, but comfortable. The old couple shared stories of their early days, the struggles of building the trading post, The raids they'd survived, the gradual acceptance they'd won through sheer persistence. It was never easy, Maria said. There were times I wanted to give up, go back to Sonora, where at least I knew the rules. But Garrison, she looked at her husband with obvious affection. He was worth the difficulties. Still is, Garrison said gruffly, but his hand found hers on the table. Later back in the barn, Ayanna was quiet, thoughtful. What are you thinking? Ethan asked. About them, Garrison and Maria. They made it work against all odds. They did. But they're exceptional people, strong, stubborn, willing to fight for decades just to exist together. Are we that strong? I don't know, Ethan admitted, but I'd like to find out. She looked at him, then really looked at him, and he saw something shift in her expression, a decision being made. Ethan Cole, she said formally, I accept your claim, not because Apache law demands it, not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I choose to. You are my man, as I am your woman for whatever time the spirits give us. The weight of the moment settled over them. This was more than survival now, more than convenience. This was a choice freely made that would define both their lives. Ayanna, he said, equally formal, I promise to protect you, provide for you, and respect you as my equal partner in whatever comes. You are my woman, as I am your man for as long as you'll have me. She moved then, closing the distance between them, and kissed him. It was their first kiss, soft and uncertain. At first, then deeper as they discovered this new aspect of their connection. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Tomorrow, everything changes, she said. Everything already has, he replied. They held each other through the night, not going further than kisses and gentle touches, both understanding that some things needed to wait until they were truly safe, truly alone. But the promise was there, the future they were choosing together, despite all the reasons they shouldn't. Dawn came with the sound of wagons being loaded. The freight train was preparing to leave, and Ethan could see the wagon master, a burly man named Thompson, talking with Garrison. They gathered their few possessions, saddled buttermilk, and walked to where the wagons were assembled. Thompson looked them over with the eye of someone who'd seen too much to be surprised, but still didn't like what he saw. Garrison says you need passage to Tombstone. Yes, sir, Ethan said. We can pay. It ain't about money, boy. You understand what you're asking. 3 days on the trail with you two is going to cause nothing but trouble. We'll keep to ourselves. That won't matter to some folks. Thompson spat tobacco juice. But I owe Garrison more than I can repay, so you've got passage. You ride in the last wagon, you don't mingle with the others, and if trouble starts, you handle it without killing anybody. Deal. Deal. The wagon was loaded with mining equipment, leaving just enough room for them to sit among the crates and barrels. Other passengers stared as they climbed aboard a minister, and his wife looked scandalized. A group of miners laughed and made crude jokes. A Mexican family crossed themselves and looked away. 3 days of this, Ayanna murmured. 3 days to a new life, Ethan countered. The wagons rolled out as the sun climbed higher, leaving Garrison's trading post behind. Ethan looked back once, saw the old man standing in his doorway, hand raised in what might have been a wave or might have been good riddance. The desert stretched ahead, vast and unforgiving, but for the first time since his parents died, Ethan felt like he was moving towards something rather than just away. Beside him, Ayanna began to hum an Apache melody, soft and haunting, that seemed to blend with the creak of wagon wheels and the whisper of wind through sand. "What's that song?" he asked. "A traveling song. We sing it when we're going to a new camp, a new life. It asks the spirits to watch over us, to make the path smooth and the destination welcoming. Think they're listening." She looked at him, and despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the impossibility of what they were attempting, she smiled. "They brought us together in a storm," she said. "I think they're still watching." The wagon train rolled on, carrying them toward Tombstone and whatever waited there. Behind them, the past fell away like shed skin. Ahead, the future shimmered like a mirage, uncertain but full of possibility. The first day on the wagon train tested them in ways Ethan hadn't anticipated. The miners in the wagon ahead kept turning around to stare, making crude gestures and laughing among themselves. The minister's wife clutched her Bible like a shield whenever she looked their way, and even the Mexican family, who should have understood something about being outsiders, kept their children from getting too close. By noon, the heat had become oppressive, the metal mining equipment in their wagon radiating warmth like an oven. Ayana had pulled her shawl over her head for shade, but Ethan could see the sweat beading on her forehead, the way she shifted uncomfortably on the hard wooden boards. "Here," he said, rigging up a piece of canvas to create some shade. "Not much, but it's something." She helped him secure the corners, their hands working together with increasing familiarity. When they were done, she settled back against a crate, and after a moment's hesitation, Ethan put his arm around her shoulders. She tensed, then relaxed into him. "The minister's wife looks like she's about to have apoplexy." Ayana observed a hint of dark humor in her voice. "Let her. Probably the most excitement she's had in years." That earned him a small laugh, quickly stifled. "You don't know what you've given up for me." "Sure I do. A life of eating trail dust, sleeping on hard ground, and taking orders from men who couldn't find their own asses with both hands and a map." "You loved it, though. The freedom, the brotherhood." He couldn't deny that. There had been something pure about the cowboy life, simple in its demands and rewards. But looking at Ayana, feeling her warmth against his side despite the heat, he knew he'd made the right choice. "There are different kinds of freedom," he said. The wagon train stopped at midday to rest the oxen and let people stretch their legs. Ethan helped Ayana down from the wagon, ignoring the stares and whispers. They found a spot of shade under a scraggly mesquite tree, sharing water from his canteen and some of the dried meat they'd bought from Garrison. "You there, boy?" Ethan looked up to see the minister approaching, his black coat dusty and his face red with heat and indignation. "Reverend," Ethan said, politely standing, "I'll not have this abomination traveling with good Christian folk. It's bad enough you've taken up with a heathen, but to flaunt it—" "We're not flaunting anything," Ethan interrupted. "We're sitting under a tree, eating lunch." "You know what I mean? It's unnatural, ungodly." Ayana stood then, and something in her bearing made the minister take a step back. "Ungodly," she said quietly. "I was baptized at the mission school." "Can you say which of us is closer to your God's teachings? The one who judges and condemns, or the ones who simply seek to live in peace?" "You dare quote scripture at me, savage?" The word hung in the air like a slap. Ethan's hand moved to his gun, but Ayana caught his wrist. "Yes," she said simply, "I dare. Judge not lest ye be judged." Matthew chapter 7. "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." John chapter 8. "Would you like me to continue, Reverend? I memorized your entire Bible at the mission school. They beat us if we got a verse wrong." The minister's face went from red to purple. "You can't—" "What I can't do," Ayana said, steel in her voice now, "is make you see past your hatred. But I can tell you this, your God, and my spirits are not so different. Both teach love, compassion, understanding. It's only men who teach hate." She sat back down, dismissing him as clearly as if she'd waved him away. The minister stood there for a moment, mouth opening and closing like a landed fish, then stomped back to his wagon. "You just made an enemy," Ethan said. "I made an enemy the moment he saw my face. At least now it's an honest enmity." Thompson's voice called out for everyone to load up, and they returned to their wagon. But something had shifted. The Mexican family nodded to them as they passed, small but significant. One of the miners tipped his hat to Ayana, though his friends cuffed him for it. The afternoon brought new challenges. The trail wound through a narrow canyon, and the wagons had to go single file. Their wagon, being last, got the worst of the dust kicked up by those ahead. Ayana coughed, pulling her shawl over her nose and mouth. Ethan did the same with his bandana, but it helped only a little. Then the wagon ahead of them, the one carrying the miners, hit a rock and cracked an axle. The whole train had to stop while repairs were made. Thompson came back to check on each wagon, his expression sour when he reached them. "This is taking too long," he said. "We need to reach Willow Springs before dark, or we'll be camping dry." "What can we do to help?" Ethan asked. Thompson looked surprised. "You want to help? We're part of this train, aren't we? Our water runs out same as everyone else's if we don't reach the springs." Thompson studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You any good with repairs? Fixed plenty of wagons on cattle drives." "Then come on, and Bringer will need every hand to unload the wagon so we can lift it." They worked alongside the others, Ethan helping to jack up the wagon, while Ayana joined the effort to unload the heavy mining equipment. The miners looked uncomfortable at first, but when she lifted a crate that had taken two of them to load, they gained a grudging respect for her strength. "Where'd you learn to lift like that?" one of them asked. "Apache women do all the heavy work in camp," she replied matter-of-factly. "Men are too busy being warriors." That got a laugh from several of the miners. "Sounds like my wife's philosophy," one said, and the tension eased a fraction more. The axle was patched rather than properly fixed, but it would hold until Tombstone. As they reloaded the wagon, the miner who'd asked about her strength offered Ayana his hand to help her up, a small gesture but significant. She accepted it with dignity. They reached Willow Springs just as the sun was setting, the small oasis a welcome sight after the day's dust and heat. The springs were barely more than a seep, but there was enough water for the animals and to refill canteens. Cottonwoods provided shade, and there was even some grass for grazing. Camp was set up quickly with practiced efficiency. Ethan and Ayana made their camp slightly apart from the others, as agreed, but not so far as to be completely isolated. The smell of cooking fires and coffee soon filled the air. "I'm going to water buttermilk," Ethan said. "You'll be all right." "I've been all right my whole life," Ayana replied, but she smiled to soften the words. At the springs, Ethan found himself standing next to Thompson, both men watching their animals drink. "She's not what I expected," Thompson said. "What did you expect?" "Don't know. Something more savage, I guess. Less educated. She put Reverend Hollis in his place right proper. She's full of surprises." "That why you chose her?" Ethan thought about it. "I didn't choose her. We chose each other. There's a difference." Thompson grunted. "Maybe so. Still, you've got a hard road ahead. Tombstone's a wild place, but it's still a white man's town. They won't welcome her." "They don't have to welcome her. They just have to leave us alone." "That might be harder than you think. There's talk of new laws restrictions on where Indians can live work. The Apache wars have people scared and angry." "The wars are over." Geronimo surrendered. "Wars like that are never really over, boy. They just go quiet for a while." When Ethan returned to their camp, he found Ayana had managed to trade some of their dried meat for fresh tortillas from the Mexican family. She'd also gathered some wild onions and herbs, turning their simple meal into something almost elegant. "You're resourceful," he said, accepting a tortilla wrapped around meat and onions. "Survival requires it, but also—" She paused, looking almost shy. "My mother taught me that a good meal can make any place feel like home, even if just for a moment." "Tell me about her." "Your mother." Ayana's expression softened. "She was beautiful, not just in face, but in spirit. She could find joy in anything, a flower blooming, a child's laugh, the way light hit the mountains at sunset. Even on the reservation when we had almost nothing, she made our wickiup feel like a palace." "She sounds wonderful." "She was. Too wonderful for the world she was born into. When the soldiers came that day, the day they killed her, she was teaching me and the other children to weave baskets. She was singing, I remember, an old song about the changing seasons. Then the shots started." Ethan reached for her hand and she let him take it. "I hid," she continued, her voice steady but distant, "under a pile of baskets. I could see through the gaps, saw her try to protect the other children, saw her fall. The soldiers realized their mistake almost immediately. We obviously weren't warriors, but it was too late. 7 dead, including my mother." "How old were you?" 12. Old enough to remember everything, young enough that the memory shaped who I became." "I'm sorry." The soldier who shot her was sorry too. He came to the reservation later, tried to make amends, brought food blankets. My father spat at his feet, told him his guilt was his to carry, not ours to absolve. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge. The camp had settled into evening routines. Men cleaning guns, women mending clothes, children being put to bed. It was so normal, so mundane that for a moment Ethan could almost forget they were outcasts. "My turn," Ayana said. "Tell me about your mother." So Ethan did. He told her about Margaret Cole, who'd come from Virginia as a young bride, following his father to Texas with dreams of adventure. How she'd adapted to frontier life, learning to shoot and ride and doctor everything from snake bites to broken bones. How she'd insisted on teaching him to read and write, even when his father said it was unnecessary for a farmer's son. She used to say education was the only thing that couldn't be taken away, Min, he said. Land could be stolen, money could be lost, but what was in your head was yours forever. She was right. She usually was. Even at the end, when the fever had her talking nonsense most of the time, she'd have moments of clarity. The last one, she looked at me and said, "Don't let this place make you small, Ethan. The world is bigger than Texas, and you're bigger than you know." And now here you are proving her right. Here we are, he corrected. That night they slept under the stars, their bedrolls close but not quite touching. Ethan woke once to find Ayanna sitting up watching the darkness. "What is it?" he whispered. "Nothing. Maybe. I thought I heard something." He listened but heard only the normal night sounds, crickets, a distant coyote, one of the miners snoring loud enough to wake the dead. "Want me to check around?" "No, it's probably nothing. Just the feeling of being watched." Apache. I don't know, the feeling is wrong for Apache, but someone is out there watching. They didn't sleep much after that, both alert to every sound. When dawn came without incident, Ethan wondered if it had been imagination. But Ayanna's instincts had kept her alive this long. He'd be a fool to ignore them. The second day brought them into rougher country. The trail wound through rocky passes and across dry washes that looked like they could become raging torrents with the slightest rain. The patched axle on the miner's wagon creaked ominously with every bump. Around midday, they encountered another wagon train heading east. The two trains stopped to exchange news and trade goods, and Ethan noticed how the other travelers stared at him and Ayanna with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. One woman actually pulled her children behind her skirts when Ayanna walked by. But there was news from Tombstone. The silver mines were booming, the town was growing, and there was work for anyone willing to do it. Law was still sketchy with the Earps gone, and the federal marshals stretched thin, but that might work in their favor. "Place sounds like chaos," Thompson said after talking with the other wagon master. "Chaos can be good for people like us," Ayanna said quietly to Ethan. "In chaos, everyone's too busy surviving to worry much about who's doing what with whom." That afternoon, their wagon hit a particularly bad stretch of trail, jolting so hard that some of the mining equipment shifted dangerously. Ethan and Ayanna worked together to secure it, and one of the miners, a younger man named Pete, came back to help. "Don't want that stuff falling on you," he said, helping Ethan tie down a heavy crate. "Seen a man crushed by shifting cargo once. Not a pretty sight." "Thanks," Ethan said, surprised by the gesture. Pete shrugged. "You helped fix our axle yesterday. Fair's fair." He glanced at Ayanna, seemed to wrestle with something, then added, "My grandmother was Mexican, caught hell for it in Pennsylvania, which is why I came west. Figured out here nobody'd care." "And do they?" Ayanna asked. "Less than back east, but still some." He looked at them meaningfully. "You two are going to catch more hell than I ever did, but, well, good luck to you." After he left, Ayanna said, "We're collecting allies, slowly but still. Either that or he's sweet on you." She looked at him with amusement. "Jealous? Should I be?" "He's not the one I chose, Ethan Cole." The simple statement warmed him more than any declaration of love might have. That evening they camped at a place called Devil's Wash, a dry riverbed with high banks that provided shelter from the wind. The minister had been glaring at them all day, and Ethan could feel trouble brewing like a storm. It came after dinner. Ethan had gone to check on Buttermilk when he heard raised voices. He ran back to find the minister standing over Ayanna, Bible in hand, practically shouting, "Spawn of Satan Jezebel! You've corrupted this young man with your heathen ways." Ayanna sat calmly looking up at him with that steady gaze that Ethan had come to recognize as her preparing for battle. "What's going on here?" Ethan demanded. "I'm trying to save your immortal soul," the minister said. "She's bewitched, can't you see? It's not natural, a white man taking up with a woman," Ethan interrupted. "Because that's all I see here. A woman who's done nothing to you except exist. She's a savage." "No," Ethan said, stepping between them. "You're the savage. You're the one spreading hate, making threats, trying to force your beliefs on others. She's just trying to live her life." A crowd had gathered, the other passengers, Thompson, even the Mexican family, watching from a distance. The minister looked around, seeking support. "Surely you all see the abomination here. The mixing of races, I see a man of God forgetting the first rule of Christianity, the Mexican mother said, suddenly stepping forward. Love thy neighbor. She's not our neighbor. She's a child of God, same as you, Pete the miner added. Maybe different color, different prayers, but last I checked, God made all of us. The minister's face was almost purple now. You're all damned, all of you consorting with heathens and race mixers. Then we'll be damned together, Thompson said, his voice cutting through the noise. And you, Reverend, will walk the rest of the way to Tombstone. Get your things. You're no longer welcome on my train. You can't. I can and I am. You've got 5 minutes to gather your belongings, then you're on your own. Your wife is welcome to stay if she wants, but you're done here. The minister's wife, who'd been silent throughout, stepped forward. I'll walk with my husband, she said quietly, but she looked at Ayanna as she said it, and there was something in her expression, not approval exactly, but understanding. They left within the hour, the minister still ranting about damnation, as they disappeared into the darkness. The camp was quiet after that, everyone processing what had happened. You stood up for us, Ayanna said to Pete and the Mexican woman. Wrong is wrong, Pete said simply. Don't matter who's doing it. The Mexican woman who introduced herself as Rosa sat down beside them. My husband's grandfather was Yaqui Indian. I know what it's like to be caught between worlds. It's not easy, but it's not impossible either. They talked for a while, sharing stories, finding common ground. When the others had gone to bed, Ethan and Ayanna sat by their small fire, processing the day's events. People surprised me today, Ayanna said, both good and bad. That's people for you, never quite what you expect. The minister's wife, she wanted to stay. I could see it in her eyes. Maybe, but she chose her husband for better or worse. As I chose you. Ethan looked at her, firelight dancing across her face. Do you regret it? Ask me in Tombstone. That night, Ethan woke to find Ayanna's bedroll empty. Panic shot through him until he spotted her standing at the edge of camp facing the darkness. He joined her, noting how she held her knife. Same feeling, he asked quietly. Stronger. We're definitely being followed. Apache. No, this is different. Patient. Apache would have made a move by now. Then who? I don't know, but they're waiting for something. They stood together watching the darkness until finally Ayanna sheathed her knife. Tomorrow we reach Tombstone, she said. Whatever this is, it'll have to make its move soon or lose us in the town. Unless it follows us there. Then we deal with it there, one problem at a time. They returned to their bedrolls, but Ethan noticed Ayanna kept her knife within reach, and he did the same with his Colt. The third day dawned clear and hot with that shimmer on the horizon that promised brutal heat. Thompson pushed harder, wanting to reach Tombstone before the worst of it. The patched axle on the miner's wagon finally gave out completely just after noon, but they were close enough that the cargo could be divided among the other wagons for the final push. As they crested the last rise, Tombstone spread out before them, a sprawling collection of buildings, from substantial brick structures to ramshackle tents, all centered around the silver mines that dotted the surrounding hills like pockmarks. It's bigger than I expected, Ayanna said. Bigger means easier to disappear in, Ethan replied, though he felt a flutter of nervousness. This would be their home at least for a while. They'd have to find work lodging a way to exist in a world that didn't want them together. Thompson stopped the train at the edge of town where a cluster of corrals and warehouses marked the freight depot. As they climbed down from their wagon for the last time, he approached them. You got plans? He asked. Find lodging, find work, Ethan said. Try Ma Hensley's boarding house on 3rd Street. She's particular about her boarders, but she's fair. Doesn't care about color as long as you pay on time and don't cause trouble. Thank you for everything. Thompson spat tobacco juice. Don't thank me yet. Tombstone's got a way of chewing people up. You two are going to be a target for every drunk miner and righteous citizen looking to cause trouble. We can handle ourselves. Maybe so, but watch yourselves. There's been talk of vigilance committees forming again trying to clean up the town. You don't want to be what they consider dirty. He walked away without another word, but Pete the miner stopped by as they were gathering their things. If you need work, he said to Ethan, the contention mine is always hiring. Hard work, dangerous, but they don't ask too many questions. What about her? Ethan asked, nodding to Ayana. There's a Chinese laundry on Allen Street. The owner's wife takes in sewing. She might... He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. It's not much, but it's work. Thank you, Ayana said with dignity. We appreciate the information. Rosa and her family stopped too, pressing a small cloth bundle into Ayana's hands. Tortillas, Rosa said. For your first meal in your new home. These small kindnesses, unexpected and precious, gave them hope as they walked into Tombstone proper. The town was everything they'd heard, loud, dirty, vital. Saloons seemed to outnumber all other businesses combined, and even in mid-afternoon drunk miners staggered through the streets. They found Ma Hensley's boarding house, a 2-story wooden structure that had seen better days but appeared clean and sturdy. Ma Hensley herself was a large woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that could probably see through walls. She looked them up and down when they inquired about a room, her expression unreadable. You're together, she asked bluntly. Yes, ma'am, Ethan said. We're married. The lie came out easier than expected. No, you're not, she said flatly. But you're planning to be, or you wouldn't be here together. She studied them another moment. I've got one room back of the second floor. Windows face the alley, not the street. Private entrance up the back stairs. That's what you want, isn't it? Privacy? Yes, ma'am. Rent's $2 a week paid in advance. No cooking in the room, no loud noise after 10, no trouble of any kind. You bring trouble to my house, you're out, no refund. Clear. Clear. The girl... She looked at Ayana. You speak English. Better than most, Ayana replied coolly. Good. Then understand this. I don't care if you're Apache Mexican or from the moon. You pay your rent, keep quiet, and don't steal. We'll get along fine. But some of my other boarders might not be so open-minded. You'll take your meals in your room, not the common dining room. That's not my rule, it's just practical. We understand, Ayana said. Ma Hensley nodded. Then we have a deal. The room was small but clean, with a brass bed that had seen better days, a washstand, and a small table with 2 chairs. The windows did indeed face the alley, but they let in light and air, and the private entrance meant they could come and go without running a gauntlet of stairs. It's perfect, Ayana said, sitting on the bed and bouncing slightly. A real bed. I haven't slept in a real bed since the mission school. We're running low on money, Ethan warned. I need to find work fast. We'll both find work. We're in this together, remember. That evening they used some of their precious remaining funds to buy basic supplies: soap, a few dishes, a oil lamp. They ate Rosa's tortillas with some beans they'd bought, sitting at their little table like they'd been doing it for years. Tomorrow we start our new life, Ethan said. Tonight we start it, Ayana corrected. She stood, moved to him, took his hands. Ethan Cole, in this room, in this place we've claimed as ours. I want to be your woman fully, not because of Apache law or white law, but because I choose it. Do you choose it too? His answer was to pull her close and kiss her deep and sure. They came together with a passion born of danger, survived, and future claimed their bodies, telling the story their words couldn't quite capture. In that small room above the streets of Tombstone, they made their own world, their own rules, their own sacred space. Later, as they lay entwined in the narrow bed, Ayana traced patterns on Ethan's chest. Apache symbols, he thought, though he didn't know their meaning. What are you writing? He asked. Protection marks. Binding marks. Love marks, though that word doesn't translate well from Apache. How would you say it in Apache? She spoke a phrase liquid and beautiful. It means more than love. It means the one who makes my spirit complete. That's what you are to me, he said, even if I don't have the words in any language. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I've been thinking about what Thompson said, about vigilance committees. We'll be careful. It's more than that. We need to be smart. Make friends, build connections, be valuable enough that people will think twice before moving against us. You've got a plan. The beginning of one. You take that job at the mine. Work hard. Make yourself indispensable. I'll take in sewing, but I'll also offer something else healing, Apache medicine. There are things I know that white doctors don't remedies that work when theirs fail. That could be dangerous. People might call you a witch. Or they might call me when their child is dying and the doctor can't help. Fear and need make strange bedfellows. Ethan pulled her closer. You're remarkable, you know that. I'm a survivor, there's a difference. Not to me. They fell asleep to the sounds of Tombstone at night, distant gunfire, drunken, singing a woman's laughter from the saloon next door. It wasn't peaceful, but it was alive and they were part of it now. Ethan woke just before dawn to find Ayana at the window, that familiar tension in her posture. They're here, she said quietly. Whoever was following us. They're in Tombstone. How do you know? I can feel them watching. Same feeling as on the trail, but closer now. Ethan joined her at the window, but the alley was empty except for a drunk sleeping against a wall. We knew this wouldn't be easy. No, she agreed, but I thought we'd have more time before the real trouble started. Maybe it's not trouble. Maybe it's just someone curious. She looked at him with fond exasperation. When has curiosity about us ever been anything but trouble? She was right, of course. But as the sun rose over Tombstone, painting the desert mountains gold and pink, Ethan felt a surge of determination. They'd made it this far against all odds. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Come back to bed, he said. We've got time before the world needs us. She came, but her knife stayed within reach on the nightstand and his Colt stayed under the pillow. In Tombstone, in their small room above the chaos, they carved out a moment of peace. But both of them knew it wouldn't last. The question wasn't if trouble would find them, but when, and whether they'd be ready when it did. The contention. Mine sat like a wound in the mountainside. Its entrance a dark mouth that swallowed men at dawn and spat them out at dusk if they were lucky. Ethan stood with a group of other hopefuls waiting for the shift boss to decide who would work and who would walk away empty-handed. You ever work a mine before? The man next to him asked. He was older, weathered with the permanent stoop of someone who'd spent years underground. No, but I'm a quick learner and not afraid of hard work. Fear might keep you alive down there. Mine's got a hunger for careless men. The shift boss, a German named Kruger with arms like tree trunks and a face carved from granite, looked them over with calculating eyes. His gaze lingered on Ethan. You, the one with the Apache woman. Ethan's jaw tightened. Word traveled fast in Tombstone. That's right. Can you swing a hammer for 10 hours without crying? I can swing one for 12 if the pay's right. Kruger almost smiled. We'll see. $1.50 a day, 6 days a week. You miss a day without cause, you're done. You cause trouble, you're done. You get hurt because you're stupid, you're done, and we don't pay for the doctor. Fair enough? Nothing fair about it, boy. Report to Tunnel 3. Kowalski will show you the work. Kowalski turned out to be the weathered man who'd spoken to Ethan earlier. He led him into the mine, the temperature dropping with each step, the weight of the mountain pressing down until Ethan felt like he could barely breathe. First rule, Kowalski said, lighting a candle and sticking it to his helmet with wax. The mountain talks. Learn to listen. When she creaks, she's settling. When she groans, she's thinking about it. When she screams, you run and don't look back. The work was brutal. Ethan's job was to load ore into carts after the miners broke it free 16-pound sledgehammer blows that sent shockwaves through his arms and spine. By noon, his hands were bloody despite the thick gloves, and his back felt like someone had taken a club to it. You're doing better than most first-timers, Kowalski observed during their brief lunch break. They sat in a slightly wider section of tunnel, eating bread and dried meat by candlelight. Most are crying for their mothers by now. I've got someone depending on me. Can't afford to quit. The Apache woman. Heard about that. You've got balls, I'll give you that. Is it going to be a problem with the other miners? Kowalski shrugged. Some will have opinions. Most are too tired to care what you do after shift. Just watch out for the Molly Boys Irish crew that works Tunnel 5. They've got strong feelings about mixing races, and they're mean drunks besides. The afternoon was worse than the morning. The deeper they went, the hotter it got, until sweat poured off Ethan like rain. His candle kept going out from the moisture, leaving him working in near darkness. Once a timber cracked overhead and everyone froze, waiting to see if it would hold or if they'd be buried alive. It held, but Ethan's hand shook for an hour after. When the shift whistle finally blew, Ethan could barely walk. He stumbled out into the late afternoon sun, blinking like a mole. Other miners slapped him on the back, a rough acceptance of someone who'd survived their first day. "Same time tomorrow," Kruger said, as Ethan collected his pay, $1.50 in silver coins that felt heavier than the ore he'd been loading. The walk back to the boarding house was agony, each step sending pain shooting up his spine. But when he opened the door to their room and saw Ayana, everything else faded. She was sitting at the table surrounded by fabric and thread, working on what looked like a dress. But she took one look at him and was on her feet, catching him as his knees buckled. "You're hurt," she said, helping him to the bed. "Just tired and sore and possibly dying." "Don't be dramatic." But her hands were gentle as she helped him out of his filthy clothes. "I'll heat water for a bath. We don't have a tub." "Ma Hensley let me use the one in the washroom. Cost an extra nickel, but you need it." While the water heated, she examined his hands, clicking her tongue at the blisters and cuts. "I'll make a poultice. These need to toughen, but not get infected." "How was your day?" he asked, trying to focus on something other than the pain. "Productive. Mrs. Chen at the laundry hired me for piecework, 2 cents per garment, for basic mending, 5 cents for anything complex. And I got 3 other orders from women who heard I could do beadwork." "That's wonderful. There's more." She helped him stand, supporting him as they made their way to the washroom. "A woman came by Mexican asking if it was true I knew Apache medicine. Her son has a fever the doctor can't break." "What did you tell her that I'd come tonight after dark?" Ethan sank into the hot water with a groan that was half pain, half pleasure. Ayana knelt beside the tub, using a cloth to wash the mine dust from his back. "Could be dangerous," he said. "If the boy dies, he won't. I know what he has, saw the same fever on the reservation. White doctors don't understand it because it comes from something specific to this land, a plant that grows near water. The cure is simple if you know it." Her hands worked the knots from his shoulders, and Ethan felt himself relaxing for the first time since entering the mine. "We're going to make this work," she said softly. "Both of us working, both of us contributing. We're building something." "A life," he agreed, catching her hand and kissing it. "Our life." That evening, Ayana went to treat the sick child while Ethan slept like the dead. She returned near midnight, moving quietly so as not to wake him, but he stirred anyway. "How did it go?" "The fever broke. The mother tried to pay me, but I told her to wait until the boy was fully recovered. Better to build trust than take quick money." She undressed in the moonlight from the window, and Ethan watched her, amazed as always by her grace and strength. When she slipped into bed beside him, her skin was cool against his sunburned body. "I saw him tonight," she said quietly. "The Watcher." Ethan came fully awake. "Where?" "Following me to the Mexican quarter. Staying in shadows, but I caught glimpses. White man, tall, moves like a soldier or a lawman." "Did he approach you?" "No, just watched. It's almost like he's studying us." "I don't like it." "Neither do I, but until he makes a move, there's nothing we can do except be careful." They lay awake for a while, listening to the sounds of Tombstone at night. Somewhere a piano played a melancholy tune, and a woman laughed high and false. The town never really slept, just dozed fitfully between bouts of violence and celebration. The next days fell into a rhythm. Ethan's body slowly adapted to the mine work, his hands toughening his muscles, remembering strength he didn't know he had. He learned to read the mountain's moods, to sense when a timber was about to fail, when a section of rock was unstable. Kowalski took him under his wing, teaching him the tricks that kept miners alive. "You're not just strong," Kowalski said one day. "You're smart. That's rare down here." "Just trying not to die." Same thing, really. Ayana's reputation grew quickly. The Mexican boy recovered completely, and word spread through the non-white communities that there was a healer who understood things the white doctors didn't. She was careful, always going after dark, never accepting payment until after recovery, building a network of grateful families who would vouch for her. But it was the 3rd week when things began to change. Ethan was coming off shift when he found the Molly boys waiting for him, 5 Irish miners with whiskey on their breath and violence in their eyes. "Well, if it isn't the Indian lover," the largest one said. His name was Sean Molly, and his brothers flanked him like attack dogs. "I don't want trouble," Ethan said, exhausted from 10 hours underground. "Too late for that, boy. You brought trouble the moment you walked into town with that savage. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll fight all 5 of us." Sean laughed. "You might be getting tough down in the mine, but you're not that tough." Ethan's hand moved toward the knife on his belt. He'd stopped carrying his gun into the mine after the first week, but stopped when he heard footsteps behind him. "He might not be that tough, which," Kowalski said, appearing with 3 other miners from Tunnel 3, "but all of us together are. You want to dance Molly? You dance with all of us."
Dripo, shh.
The Molly boys looked at the odds now more even, and Sean spat at Ethan's feet. "This ain't over, Indian lover. You watch your back." After they left, Ethan looked at Kowalski in surprise. "Why, you're one of us now. 3 weeks in the mountain without dying or crying makes you a Tunnel 3 man. We look after our own." It was the first time since leaving Texas that Ethan felt like he belonged somewhere. That night he told Ayanna about the confrontation as she worked on a dress she was making her first commission from a white woman, the wife of a bank clerk who'd admired Ayanna's own clothing. "They'll come at you again," she said. "Men like that don't give up easily." "I know, but having backup helps. You're making friends. Good. We need allies." She held up the dress, examining her work. "As am I. Mrs. Morrison, the woman who commissioned this, she's invited me to tea tomorrow." "Really? Don't look so shocked. Not all white women are like the minister's wife. Some are just curious, and curiosity can become acceptance if handled right." "Be careful." "Always am." The tea was more successful than either had hoped. Mrs. Morrison, it turned out, was from New York originally and had what she called modern ideas about race and society. She was fascinated by Ayanna's story, especially the mission school education, and ended up inviting 2 other women to meet her. "You speak better English than half the miners in this town," one of them said admiringly. "Education has no color," Ayanna replied diplomatically. Meanwhile, Ethan was earning respect in the mine. When a cave-in trapped 2 men in Tunnel 6, he was part of the rescue crew that dug for 14 hours straight to reach them. When they pulled the men out alive, Kruger himself clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "You've got the heart of a miner," he said. "Keep this up and I might make you a crew leader." But it was the 5th week when the Watcher finally revealed himself. Ethan was walking home later than usual after staying to help repair some equipment when a man stepped out of the shadows. Tall, lean, with the bearing of a soldier and a face weathered by sun and hard living. He wore a badge, U.S. Marshal. "Ethan Cole." "That's right." Ethan's hand moved to his knife. "Relax, son. If I wanted you dead, you'd never have seen me coming. Name's Tom Brennan. I've been watching you and your woman for a while now." "We noticed. Why?" "Because someone's paying good money to find her. Apache named Red Knife says she's his lawful wife, stolen by a white man." Ethan's blood went cold. "She's not his wife. Never was." "I know that. Did some checking. Talked to folks at Garrison's trading post, pieced together the real story. That's why I'm talking to you instead of arresting you." "Then what do you want?" Brennan pulled out a cigarette, lit it with deliberate slowness. "Red Knife's offering $100 for her return." "That's good money. But see, I've been watching you 2 for weeks now, seeing how you work, how you treat each other, how you're building something here. And I'm thinking maybe there's a different way to handle this." "What kind of way?" "The kind where Red Knife gets told she died. Fever accident doesn't matter. He gets closure, stops looking, moves on. And you 2 get to live your lives without looking over your shoulders." "Why would you do that?" "Because I've got a proposition for you. This town's getting wild again. The ERPs are gone, and people are starting to push boundaries. I need deputies I can trust, unofficial ones, people who know both sides of the law, who can move in circles I can't." "You want me to be an informant?" "I want you to be my eyes and ears in the mine, and I want her to be the same in the Mexican and Chinese quarters. In exchange, I make your problems go away and make sure the law looks favorably on you." Ethan was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I need to talk to Ayanna." "Fair enough, but don't take too long. Red Knife's getting impatient. and there are others who might take his money and not ask questions about whether she comes back alive. When Ethan told Ayanna about the conversation, she listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. "He's offering us protection," Ethan said, "real protection from the law itself. In exchange for being spies, informants, and only about actual crimes, not gossip." She was quiet for a long time, then said, "In Apache culture, we have a saying, 'The enemy of my enemy is my friend.' This marshal is not our friend, but Red Knife is definitely our enemy. So you think we should do it?" "I think we should be very careful. But yes, if it means Red Knife stops hunting us, it's worth considering." They met with Brennan the next night in a small cantina on the edge of town, a place where mixed couples didn't draw stares because everyone was too focused on their own secrets. "Smart place to meet," Brennan said, approving. "Your terms," Ayanna said without preamble. "Explain them fully." "Simple, you hear about planned robberies, murders, big crimes. You tell me. I don't care about gambling, whoring, or who's selling liquor to Indians. I care about the things that threaten the stability of the town. And in return, I send word to Red Knife that you died of fever. Tragic story. I even have a grave to show him if he comes looking. And I make sure the local law leaves you alone no matter what the good citizens might want." "What about the Molly boys?" Ethan asked. "What about them?" "They've been making threats." Brennan smiled coldly. "The Molly boys have been selling stolen mining equipment. Been looking for proof for months. You get me that proof and they'll be breaking rocks in Yuma prison instead of bothering you." Ayanna and Ethan looked at each other, a whole conversation in a glance. "We'll do it," Ayanna said. "But with conditions. We're not testifying in court, we're not entrapping anyone, and we're not informing on people just trying to survive." "Fair enough. We have a deal." They shook on it, though Ethan noticed Ayanna kept her left hand near her knife the entire time. The arrangement worked better than expected. Within a week, Ethan overheard the Molly boys planning to steal a shipment of dynamite and sell it to Mexican revolutionaries. He passed the information to Brennan, who caught them red-handed. Sean Molly cursed Ethan's name as they dragged him away, but he had no proof of betrayal, just suspicion. Meanwhile, Ayanna learned about a planned assassination attempt on a visiting judge from one of her patients, a prostitute who'd overheard her client bragging. The judge lived, the would-be assassin was arrested, and Brennan's reputation grew. "You two are better than a dozen deputies," he told them one night. "Keep this up, and I'll make sure you can stay in Tombstone as long as you want." But it was the 7th week when everything changed again. Ayanna had been feeling ill in the mornings, trying to hide it, but Ethan noticed anyway. When she fainted while working on a dress, he insisted she see a doctor even though she protested. "I know what's wrong with me," she said weakly as he helped her to bed. "Then tell me." She took his hand, placed it on her stomach. "I'm carrying our child." The world stopped. Ethan stared at her, unable to process the words. "A baby," he finally managed. "Yes. I've known for a week, but I wanted to be sure." "But how? When?" She laughed softly. "Do you really need me to explain how babies are made?" "No, we're not even really married. And you're Apache, and I'm white, and the child will be ours," she said firmly. "The child will be ours. Everything else is just details." Ethan sank onto the bed beside her, mind racing. A baby. In Tombstone, with all their enemies and uncertainties and the constant danger. "Are you angry?" she asked quietly. "Angry? No, I'm terrified, amazed, happy, confused, all of it at once." "That sounds about right." He lay down beside her, pulling her close. "We need to get actually married, legal married. No judge in Tombstone will marry us. Then we'll find one who will, or go to Mexico, or something. I want this child to have my name legally." "Our child will have both our names legally or not." They lay together, hands joined over her still flat stomach, imagining the future. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. The news changed everything. Ethan worked even harder in the mine, saving every penny. Ayanna was more careful with her healing work, avoiding anything dangerous. They started looking for a better place to live, somewhere a child could grow up. It was Mrs. Morrison who provided the solution. Her husband had been promoted to bank manager, and they were moving to a house on the better side of town. Our old cottage is available, she told Ayana. It's small, just 2 rooms, but it has a little garden and good neighbors. The landlord owes my husband money, so he'll rent to you if we vouch for you. The cottage was perfect, close enough to town for work, but far enough for privacy. It even had a small stable where they could keep buttermilk. The rent was higher than the boarding house, but with both of them working and Ethan's promised promotion to crew leader, they could manage it. They moved on a Sunday with help from Kowalski and, surprisingly, Rosa's family from the wagon train who had also settled in Tombstone. As they arranged their few possessions in their new home, Ayana began to sing an Apache lullaby, soft and sweet. For the baby, she explained when Ethan looked at her questioningly. Sing it again, he said. I want to learn it. So she taught him line by line an Apache lullaby being learned by a white cowboy for their mixed-blood child. It was everything their life had become impossible, beautiful, and entirely their own. That night, in their own home, for the first time, they made love with a tenderness born of the knowledge that they were no longer just 2 people, but the beginning of a family. Outside, Tombstone roared and raged, as always, but inside their small cottage, there was peace. I need to tell you something, Ayana said afterward, her head on his chest. What? Red Knife isn't going to believe I'm dead, not without proof. He'll come eventually, or send someone. Then we'll be ready. With a baby. People have been raising babies in dangerous places since the beginning of time. We'll manage. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I want our child to know both cultures, Apache and white, to be proud of both, ashamed of neither. That's a tall order in this world. Then we'll have to make a different world, won't we? Ethan thought about that, about the world they were trying to create in their small cottage in this wild town against all odds and expectations. Yes, he said finally, we will. The next morning brought a new challenge. Kruger was waiting when Ethan arrived at the mine. Heard you moved into the Collins cottage, he said without preamble. That's right. Also heard your woman's expecting. News traveled fast in Tombstone. Yes. Can't have a crew leader who's distracted by family troubles. You planning to stay focused on the work? More focused than ever. I've got more reason to work now. Kruger studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Crew leader position's yours. $250 a day, and you manage Tunnel 3's second shift. Don't make me regret this. You won't. The promotion meant more money, but also more responsibility. Ethan threw himself into it, learning to manage men to read the mountain's moods, even better to balance safety with productivity. Some of the men resented taking orders from someone so young, but his work in the rescue had earned him enough respect to get by. Meanwhile, Ayana's pregnancy became known in the community, bringing unexpected consequences. Some of the white women who'd been friendly grew cold, unable to accept the reality of a mixed-blood child, but others, particularly those who'd been outsiders themselves, rallied around her. Let them talk, Mrs. Morrison said firmly when some society ladies made cutting remarks. Small minds always fear what they don't understand. The Mexican and Chinese communities were more accepting, seeing in Ayana and Ethan's struggle something of their own experiences. Rosa became a regular visitor, bringing food and advice about pregnancy and childbirth. The baby will be beautiful, she said confidently. Mixed children always are. They get the best of both bloods. But it was Brennan who brought the most significant news. He arrived at their cottage one evening looking grim. Red Knife's coming, he said without preamble. My sources say he's healed and gathering warriors. He doesn't believe you're dead. Ayana's hand went to her stomach protectively. When thoughts, week, maybe 2, he's bringing 5 men all seasoned warriors. They plan to take you back or kill you both trying. Then we run? Ethan said immediately. Leave tonight, head for California maybe, or running won't help, Brennan interrupted. He'll follow. Men like him always do, but I have a different idea. What kind of idea? The kind that ends this permanently, but it'll require courage from both of you and trust in me. We're listening, Ayana said. We let him come. But when he arrives, he finds not a cowboy and a runaway Apache girl, but a U.S. Marshal's deputy and his pregnant wife protected by the full weight of federal law. I'm not a deputy, Ethan pointed out. You could be. I have the authority to deputize in emergencies, and an Apache war band threatening Tombstone citizens counts as an emergency. And that would stop Red Knife. No, but it would give me legal grounds to arrest him if he threatens you. And more importantly, it would make killing you a federal crime. Red Knife's not stupid. He knows attacking federal officers brings the army. What's the catch? What? Ayanna asked, always practical. The catch is you'd actually have to be deputies. Both of you. First Apache woman deputy in Arizona territory has a nice ring to it, don't you think? They looked at each other, weighing the options. It was dangerous, possibly deadly. But it was also a chance for legitimacy, for protection that went beyond one marshal's goodwill. Do it, Ayanna said firmly. Make us both deputies. Brennan smiled. Thought you might say that. Brought the badges and everything. The swearing in was simple, just words spoken in their cottage with Rosa and Kowalski as witnesses. But when Brennan pinned the badges on them, something fundamental shifted. They were no longer just outcasts trying to survive. They were representatives of the law, however unlikely. These are temporary, Brennan warned. 6-month appointments, but if things go well, could become permanent. And if Red Knife doesn't accept it, Ethan asked, then we fight. But now we fight with the law on our side. That night, Ayanna and Ethan sat in their small garden watching the stars. She was showing now just a gentle swell beneath her dress, but enough that the reality of their coming child was undeniable. Everything's changing so fast, she said. Too fast. No, just a year ago I was preparing to be forced into marriage with a man I hated. Now I'm a deputy marshal pregnant with the child of a man I love living in a house with a garden. It's like someone else's life. It's our life, Ethan said firmly, the one we're choosing every day. She leaned against him and they sat in comfortable silence listening to the night sounds of Tombstone, more subdued here on the edge of town, but still present. The distant piano, the occasional gunshot, the cry of a coyote in the hills. He'll come soon, she said quietly. I know. Are you ready? I've been ready since that night in the cave. The question is he ready for us? She smiled at that fierce and proud. No, he's expecting the girl who ran and the boy who helped her. He's not expecting who we've become. Inside the cottage, their badges lay on the table, catching the lamplight. 2 pieces of metal that might mean nothing or might mean everything. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, work in the mine, healing in the community, preparing for Red Knife's arrival. But tonight they had this each other, their coming child, and the life they were building against all odds. Red Knife arrived on a Tuesday morning, the dust from 6 Apache ponies rising like smoke against the desert sun. Ethan was at the mine when word came Kowalski running into Tunnel 3 with sweat streaming down his face. They're here, he gasped. 6 Apache warriors riding slow through town like they own it. They're headed for your cottage. Ethan's blood turned to ice. He dropped his hammer, grabbed his gun belt from where he kept it stashed, and ran. Behind him, Kowalski shouted for others to follow, and by the time Ethan burst from the mine, half of Tunnel 3's crew was with him. The run to the cottage was the longest of his life. His mind painted terrible pictures, Ayanna hurt, taken, dead. His badge bounced against his chest as he ran, a reminder of the protection it was supposed to offer. But what good was federal law against men who'd lived outside it their whole lives? He rounded the corner to their street and stopped dead. Red Knife sat on his horse in front of the cottage, magnificent and terrible in traditional war dress. The scars Ayanna had given him were visible even from a distance, 3 parallel lines across his left cheek that had healed badly, pulling his face into a permanent sneer. But it was the scene in the garden that made Ethan's heart both race and swell with pride. Ayanna stood in front of their door, wearing her badge pinned prominently on her dress, Brennan beside her with his rifle casual but ready. And arranged behind them were at least 20 people, Rosa and her family. Mrs. Morrison and several other white women. Some of the Chinese families Ayanna had helped, even Ma Hensley, with what looked like a shotgun under her shawl. That's close enough, Brennan called out as Ethan approached. State your business, Red Knife. The Apache war chief's eyes never left Ayanna. I come for what is mine. The woman promised to me. No woman here is yours, Ayanna said, her voice carrying clearly. I am Deputy U.S. Marshal Ayanna Cole, and you have no claim on me. Cole. Red Knife's scarred face twisted further. You take the white man's name like a dog takes its master's collar. I took my husband's name freely as I took him freely. Red Knife finally looked at Ethan, who had moved to stand beside his wife, the miners spreading out behind him in a rough line. You, Red Knife said with contempt. The boy who thinks he's a man. You corrupted her with your weakness. The only corruption here, Ethan said steadily, is a man who thinks he can own a woman like property. One of Red Knife's warriors said something sharp in Apache hand moving to his rifle. But Red Knife held up a hand, his eyes scanning the growing crowd. More townspeople had arrived, drawn by the spectacle. Some looked hostile, but toward whom wasn't clear. You hide behind white man's law, Red Knife said to Ayanna. Behind their tin badges and paper words. But you are Apache. Your blood knows the truth. My blood knows many truths, Ayanna replied. Including this one, I would rather die than go with you. That can be arranged. Try it, Brennan said conversationally, and you'll be dead before you clear leather. And then the army comes for your people. Is your pride worth the destruction of your band? Red Knife was silent for a long moment, calculating. Ethan could see him weighing options, counting guns, measuring resolve. Then Ayanna did something unexpected. She began to speak in Apache, her voice rising and falling in what sounded like formal cadences. Red Knife's warriors shifted uneasily, and even Red Knife looked surprised. What's she saying? Ethan whispered to Brennan. Don't know, but whatever it is, they don't like it. Ayanna spoke for several minutes, her hand resting on her swollen belly, her other hand pointing at Red Knife, at his warriors, at the sky. When she finished, there was absolute silence. Red Knife's face had gone pale beneath its weathered brown. One of his warriors actually backed his horse up a few steps. You invoke the old law, Red Knife said, in English, his voice strained. I do. That law is for Apache women, not white man's whores. I am Apache by blood, recognized by your own brother Black Wolf, when he let us go at Garrison's trading post. Or do you call your brother a liar? The trap was neat, Ethan realized. Red Knife couldn't deny his brother's judgment without losing face. What old law? Brennan asked quietly. The law of the woman with child, Ayanna said loud enough for all to hear. Any Apache woman carrying a child can invoke protection from all Apache until the child is walking. To harm her or her chosen man is to be cursed by the spirits cast out not just from the band, but from the afterlife itself. Superstition, Red Knife spat, but Ethan could see uncertainty in his eyes. Then test it, Ayanna challenged. Kill me and my unborn child. See if the spirits care about your disbelief. The crowd had grown larger, townspeople pressing closer. Someone shouted, "Leave her alone," and others took up the cry. Even some who'd been hostile to the mixed couple seemed offended by the threat to a pregnant woman. Red Knife looked around, saw the crowd, the armed men, the federal marshal, and most importantly, the unwavering resolve in Ayanna's eyes. This is not over, he said finally. Yes, it is, Ayanna said firmly. By the old law, you cannot touch me or mine until my child walks. By white law, you cannot touch us at all. By any law, I am not yours and never was. Go home, Red Knife. Find a woman who wants you if such a creature exists, but leave us in peace. For a moment, violence trembled in the air like heat shimmer. Red Knife's hand twitched toward his knife, his warriors tensed. The crowd held its breath. Then Kowalski stepped forward, all 6 feet and 200 pounds of him, sledgehammer in hand. The lady asked you to leave, he said simply. One by one, the other miners stepped forward. Then Rosa's husband and sons. Then, surprisingly, Mrs. Morrison's banker husband and several other townsmen. Even some who'd shown prejudice before seemed to understand that this was about more than race. It was about whether Tombstone would let armed men threaten a pregnant woman in broad daylight. Red Knife looked at the wall of people between him and Ayanna, and Ethan saw the moment he accepted defeat. Not permanent defeat. The hate in his eyes promised that, but defeat for now. When the child walks, he said to Ayanna, the protection ends. In 2 years, many things can change, she replied. You might be dead. I might be dead. Or you might finally understand that forcing someone to be with you is not strength, but weakness. Red Knife wheeled his horse around violently, his warriors following. They rode out of town at a gallop, dust rising behind them like a wall. The crowd erupted in a mixture of relief and celebration. People pressed forward to shake Ethan's hand to assure Ayanna they'd stand by her. Even some who'd been cold before seemed warmed by her courage. That was magnificent, Mrs. Morrison said, tears in her eyes. Simply magnificent. That was dangerous, Brennan corrected, but he was smiling. Invoking Apache law while wearing a federal badge. You're making up the rules as you go, aren't you? Isn't that what America is supposed to be? Ayanna asked. Making new rules when the old ones don't fit. Ma Hensley pushed through the crowd, her hidden shotgun now visible. You've got spine, girl, she said gruffly. Both of you do. That's worth something in this town. As the crowd dispersed, Ethan and Ayanna stood in their garden holding each other. He could feel her trembling now that the immediate danger had passed. You were incredible, he said. I was terrified. Couldn't tell. That's because I learned from the best. She looked up at him. You stood against Black Wolf for me when you barely knew me. I could do no less for us. Brennan approached his expression thoughtful. That old law, is it real? Real enough. My grandmother told me about it. It was meant to protect women and ensure children were born safely even during times of war. And Red Knife will honor it. He has to. His own warriors heard me invoke it. If he breaks it, they'll abandon him. No Apache will follow a cursed leader. So we have 2 years. More or less. Brennan nodded slowly. A lot can happen in 2 years. Red Knife's made a lot of enemies. A man like that might not live to see your child walk. The implication was clear, but Ethan shook his head. We're not assassins. No, but you're survivors. And sometimes that means letting your enemies destroy themselves. That evening, their cottage was full of visitors. Rosa brought food. Kowalski brought whiskey. The miners from Tunnel 3 brought their rough companionship. Even Mrs. Morrison came, bringing several other women who wanted to hear the story firsthand. You've changed things today, Mrs. Morrison said quietly to Ayanna. Shown people that courage has no color. I just wanted to protect my family. That's what courage is, dear. As the evening wore on, Ethan watched Ayanna move through their small home serving food, accepting congratulations, her hand frequently going to her belly where their child grew. She'd never looked more beautiful to him, or more formidable. You're staring again, she said, catching him watching. Can't help it. I married a warrior. You married a woman who learned from a good man that standing up for what's right is worth any risk. Later, after everyone had gone, they lay in bed listening to the unusually quiet night. Even Tombstone seemed subdued after the day's drama. Do you really think we have 2 years? Ethan asked. I don't know. Red Knife is proud but not stupid. He knows attacking us now would bring the army. But in 2 years, things could be different. We need to use the time wisely. To do what? To build something he can't destroy. A place in this community so solid that attacking us would mean attacking the town itself. That's ambitious. That's survival. The next months passed in a blur of change. Ayanna's pregnancy advanced, and with it, her reputation as both healer and deputy. She handled disputes in the non-white communities with a fairness that earned respect, and her medical knowledge saved several lives that winter when fever swept through the mining camps. Ethan's position at the mine solidified. He implemented new safety measures that reduced accidents, earning Kruger's grudging praise and the loyalty of his men. When a German investor visited looking to buy into the mine, Kruger had Ethan give the tour. This one started as a common laborer, Kruger said. Now he runs one of our most productive crews. That's American opportunity for you. The investor, impressed, asked Ethan about his background. When he learned about Ayanna, instead of being scandalized, he was intrigued. An Apache woman, deputy marshal. How fascinating, I must meet her. The meeting went better than expected. The investor Hans Mueller had progressive ideas shaped by his travels. He ended up commissioning Ayanna to make traditional Apache items for his collection back in Berlin, paying prices that made Ethan's eyes widen. You're becoming respectable, Brennan told them one day. Dangerous thing for outlaws. We're not outlaws, Ethan protested. No, but you're not quite law-abiding citizens either. You're something in between, which in Tombstone might be exactly right. The baby came on a spring morning after 14 hours of labor that had Ethan pacing frantically while Rosa and a Mexican midwife attended Ayana. When the first cry rang out, he burst into the room despite protocol. "A son," Rosa announced, placing the squalling infant in Ayana's arms. Perfect and healthy. The baby was beautiful skin, a golden brown that was neither white nor Apache, but something uniquely his own, a head of dark hair, and when he opened his eyes, they were Ethan's blue. "What do we name him?" Ethan asked, touching his son's tiny hand with wonder. "William," Ayana said, "after your father, William Eagle Cole." "Eagle? For my father. He needs both bloods honored in his name." William Eagle Cole grew strong and healthy, a source of wonder for the unusual collection of people who'd become their extended family. Mrs. Morrison knitted blankets. Ma Hensley brought mysterious tonics that she swore would make him strong. The miners carved wooden toys, and Rosa's children appointed themselves older siblings. But it was Brennan who brought the most unexpected gift, a legal document. "Adoption papers," he explained. "I've legally adopted you both as my children, which makes William my legal grandson. It's a formality, but it gives him additional legal protection." Ayana finished understanding immediately. "If something happens to us, he has a white grandfather with federal authority." Exactly. Red Knife might risk attacking a mixed couple, but attacking a federal marshal's family that brings consequences even he wouldn't want. It was a generous gesture that left them both speechless. Brennan, the gruff lawman who'd started as their watcher, had become their protector in the truest sense. As spring turned to summer, William began to crawl, then pull himself up on furniture. Each milestone brought them closer to the day he would walk, the day Red Knife's enforced truce would end. "We could leave," Ethan suggested one evening as they watched William play with a wooden horse Kowalski had carved. "Go to California, start over." "We could," Ayana agreed. "But look around. This is our home now. These people are our family. Do we abandon that because of one man's hatred?" She was right. Their cottage had become a gathering place. Their garden produced vegetables they shared with neighbors. William was everyone's favorite child. They'd built exactly what Ayana had envisioned, a place in the community so solid that attacking them would mean attacking the town itself. The test came sooner than expected. William was 11 months old, not yet walking, but close when Red Knife returned. This time he came alone at night, appearing in their garden like a ghost. Ethan, unable to sleep, had stepped outside for air when he saw him. His hand went for his gun, but Red Knife held up empty hands. "I come to talk, nothing more." "Talk then," Ethan said, not relaxing his guard. "You've won," Red Knife said simply. "The woman, the town, the life you've built. You've won it all." This was never a contest. Everything is a contest, but I am tired of fighting battles I cannot win. I came to see what kind of man could take what I thought was mine and make me look like a fool. I didn't take anything. Ayana chose her own path. Yes, that is what I could not understand, that she had the right to choose. Red Knife was quiet for a moment. "The child, he is strong, very strong. Good. He will need to be living between worlds." He turned to go, then stopped. Tell her the debt is ended. When the child walks, I will not come. There has been enough blood between us." Why the change? Red Knife almost smiled, the scars pulling his face into something that might have been rueful. Black Wolf is dead. Killed by white soldiers for stealing cattle he didn't steal. His last words were about the waste of it all, the endless fighting that solves nothing. Maybe he was right. He disappeared into the darkness, and Ethan never saw him again. A month later, they heard Red Knife had been killed in Mexico fighting rurales. Whether it was true or not, he never returned to Tombstone. William took his first steps on his first birthday, toddling between Ethan and Ayana, while a yard full of friends cheered. It should have been a day of fear, the end of their protection, but instead it was pure celebration. "We did it," Ayana said that night, William sleeping between them in their bed. "We survived everything they threw at us." "We did more than survive," Ethan corrected. "We thrived." 5 years later, Ethan owned a quarter share in the contention mine, bought with savings and loans from friends who'd become investors. Ayana had opened a proper clinic treating anyone, regardless of ability to pay, funded partly by wealthy patients who came specifically for her unique combination of Apache and modern medicine. William grew tall and strong, equally comfortable in both worlds his parents had given him. He spoke English, and Apache could rope a calf and recite Shakespeare, knew which plants could heal and which could harm. On their cottage wall hung 2 photographs. One showed them on their wedding day. They'd eventually found a judge in Tucson willing to marry them, looking young and uncertain, but determined. The other, taken 5 years later, showed them with William and his new sister, Sarah, singing Dove Cole in front of their cottage, with their extended family of miners, merchants, Mexicans, Chinese, and even proper white society ladies all crowded together. "That's quite a picture," Brennan said one evening, studying it. He'd retired from active marshalling but still served as an advisor, and more importantly as grandfather to William and Sarah. "It's America," Ayana said simply. "Not the America that is, but the America that could be." "The America you're building one stubborn day at a time," Brennan corrected. That night as they prepared for bed, Ethan watched Ayana brush out her still long black hair, now with a few silver strands that she called her wisdom marks. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "That night in the cave, choosing to trust me." She put down her brush, came to him, framed his face with her hands. "That night in the cave, I wasn't choosing to trust you. I was choosing to trust myself. My instinct that said here was something different, something worth the risk. And I was right. We both were." "Yes," she agreed, kissing him. "We both were." Outside, Tombstone had grown and changed, becoming more civilized, more regulated. The wild days were ending, but for Ethan and Ayana, that was fine. They'd had enough wildness for one lifetime. William called from his room, having a nightmare, and they went to him together. As Ayana sang the Apache lullaby she'd taught Ethan years ago, and Ethan smoothed his son's hair with work-roughened hands, they were simply parents comforting a child. Not a white man and an Apache woman defying convention, not deputies or business owners or symbols of change, just 2 people who'd found each other in a storm and chosen to hold on. "Tell me the story," William murmured sleepily. "About the cave." So Ethan told it as he had many times before about the storm that brought 2 strangers together and the love that made them family. By the time he finished, William was asleep again, safe in his bed in the home his parents had built against all odds. Ayana and Ethan returned to their room, and through the window they could see the lights of Tombstone spreading toward the horizon, growing beyond the rough mining camp it had been when they arrived. "We should buy more land," Ayana said practically. "For the children. This town's going to keep growing and land will be valuable." "Already thinking like a land baroness," Ethan teased. "Thinking like a mother who wants her children to have choices we didn't have." "They'll have choices," Ethan assured her. "And more than that, they'll have the courage to make them. They're our children, after all." "Our children," Ayana repeated, savoring the words. "In the cave that night, if someone had told me I'd be here saying those words, you'd have thought they were crazy." "No," she said thoughtfully. "I think even then some part of me knew. When you shared your food, when you tended my wounds, when you stood between me and your people's hatred, some part of me knew we were building something that would last." They stood together at the window, watching their town sleep, their children safe in their beds, their future stretching ahead like the desert, after rain full of unexpected blooms and hidden beauty. "I love you," Ethan said, words that still felt like a miracle every time he spoke them. "And I love you," Ayana replied. "My unlikely cowboy, my federal deputy, my husband, the father of my children, the man who saw me in a storm and decided I was worth everything. You were. You are. You always will be." In the distance, a coyote howled and others answered their wild song echoing across the desert. It was the same sound they'd heard that first night in the cave, but now it didn't sound lonely. It sounded like home. The next morning brought news that would change everything again. Hans Müller, the German investor, had returned with a proposition. He wanted to fund a school, a real school that would accept all children, regardless of race, and he wanted Ayana to help run it. Education is the future, he said over coffee in their garden, and children who learn together might grow up to live together peacefully. It's a beautiful dream, Ayana said carefully. But the reality would be difficult. Many people won't accept it. Many people didn't accept you and Ethan either yet. Here you are. Sometimes the difficult things are the most worth doing. William, playing nearby, looked up. I want to go to school with everyone, he announced. Not just a white school or an Apache school, everyone's school. And in that moment, Ethan saw their future stretching ahead, not just survival, not just acceptance, but the chance to shape the world their children would inherit. We'll do it, he said, catching Ayana's eye and seeing her agreement. We'll build your school. It would be another fight, another challenge to the way things had always been. There would be opposition threats, probably violence, but they'd faced all that before and won. You know what this means, Ayana said that evening as they planned. We're not just living between worlds anymore, we're building a bridge. Good, Ethan said firmly. It's about time someone did. As the sun set over Tombstone, painting the desert in shades of gold and red, Ethan thought about that young cowboy who'd gotten lost in a storm, who'd found an Apache woman in a cave and made a choice that changed everything. That boy couldn't have imagined this life the respect earned the family built. The community changed one stubborn day at a time. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the best lives were the ones you couldn't imagine until you were living them. Papa, Sarah called from where she was playing with her doll. Tell me about the cave. So he did, adding new details with each telling, watching his children's eyes grow wide with wonder at the story of how their parents found each other. And as he talked, Ayana leaned against him, her hand finding their fingers interlacing as naturally as breathing. They'd started as strangers in a storm and become something unprecedented, a family that shouldn't exist but did, a love that shouldn't have survived, but had a future that shouldn't have been possible, but was being built one day at a time. The school would be built. There would be struggles and setbacks, but also victories and breakthroughs. William would grow up to become a doctor trained in both modern and traditional medicine. Sarah would become a teacher carrying on the work her parents started. And their children and their children's children would carry forward the legacy of that night in the cave when two people chose each other over fear. But all that was still to come. For now there was a family in a garden in Tombstone. The desert cooling around them, the stars beginning to appear overhead, and the absolute certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. The storm brought us together, Ayana said softly, watching their children play. And love kept us together, Ethan added. No, she corrected, smiling. Choice kept us together. Love just made it worthwhile. As if in agreement, thunder rumbled in the distance, another storm building over the mountains, bringing rain to the desert, bringing change, bringing possibility. But this time they weren't strangers seeking shelter. They were home, and no storm could shake the foundation they'd built. William ran to them, Sarah toddling behind, and they gathered their children close as the first drops of rain began to fall. The desert would bloom again, as it always did after rain, and their family, unlikely as it was, would continue to grow and thrive. Proof that love could conquer hatred, that courage could overcome fear, and that sometimes the most beautiful things were born from the most difficult circumstances. The young cowboy and the Apache bride had become so much more than either could have imagined. They'd become the future, complicated, challenging, but absolutely, undeniably real. And in Tombstone, as the rain fell and washed the dust from the streets, their story became legend told and retold, changing with each telling, but always carrying the same truth that love, real love, the kind you choose and fight for, and build day by day, could transform not just two people, but an entire world. The cave still stood in the desert, empty now, except for memories and shadows. But sometimes travelers caught in storms would take shelter there and swear they could feel something, a presence, a warmth, as if the very stones remembered the night when everything changed. And perhaps they did. Perhaps some things were too powerful to fade, too important to forget. Perhaps love once chosen, once fought for, once proven, left marks on the world that time couldn't erase. In Tombstone, in a cottage with a garden, a family slept peacefully while the storm passed overhead. And in their dreams, they were all in a cave, safe and warm, and together while outside the world raged and changed and was reborn with the rain.